Chapter 639, You'll Send Hitmen After Me. Chapter 639, You'll Send Hitmen After Me. However reluctant Mu Yaoyao was, she was still dragged out by Steward Fong. Grand Secretary Fong. Feng Wu wanted to say something, but the old man wasn't in the mood. He was so disappointed. Lady Mu wasn't his own daughter, but he had brought her up himself, and what she had tried to do to him was unbelievable. Grand Secretary Fong waved his hand, indicating that Feng Wu should keep her silence. Lord Mu is the patron of the Yao clan's business. Grand Secretary Fong snorted. Mu Yaoyao is trying to take the house for herself through the Yao clan. She thinks I can't see through her little scam. Why couldn't she just say so if she wanted to buy the house herself? Why did she have to go through a third party? And she pretended she had no part in it. That innocent look she had faked was ridiculous. Grand Secretary Fong, don't be mad. Mu Yaoyao can have her own plan and so can you. Feng Wu shrugged. But I'll have to sell this house eventually and it has to happen within 2 weeks. Grand Secretary Fong sighed. Otherwise, I fear that the curse will fall on Xian Yi. Grand Secretary Fong said in resignation, but I can't just sell it to anyone. There are rules. First of all, the buyer has to be a master-level formation master. Then, they have to be compatible with the aura of the house. Moreover, Grand Secretary Fong shifted his gaze to Feng Wu as he spoke. Old Master, you. Oh my. Grand Secretary Fong smacked the table. The answer was right in front of my eyes all along. Xiao Wu, you fit the criteria to the T. To the T. That's right. Grand Secretary Fong asked, aren't you a master-level formation master? I am. And are you not compatible with the aura of the manor? I am. And the Lingji mushroom and blood ginseng? Actually, I do have them. Problem solved. Grand Secretary Fong had always been a free spirit, and he had only become more capricious after retirement. Seeing that Feng Wu was hesitant, he made the decision for her. What more do we need? I'm giving the house to you for free. For free. Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You declined 1,000,000 taels of silver from the Yao family, and you're giving the house to me for nothing? Well, you're a very likable kid. Grand Secretary Fong told the old steward to get a pen and paper ready. The old steward came back with the stationery shortly afterward. What a willful old man. He wanted to give the house away, and he began to draft the official document right away. He finished it in no time. Feng Wu took a look and saw that it was very succinct. She was to accept the house free of charge, no obligations attached. Here, sign it. The old man handed the writing brush to Feng Wu. Sign here and we'll go change the title deed to your name. Then it's yours. What are you waiting for, kiddo? Are you not happy with a big house with great feng shui? The old man teased. Feng Wu would be lying if she said that she wasn't tempted. She had no idea why, but she just kept running into good people. Mu Yaoyao was family, but instead of selling it to that girl, Grand Secretary Fong was giving the house to Feng Wu as a gift. Why are you so happy that you're going to cry? The old man chuckled when he saw the dazed look on Feng Wu's face. Feng Wu bit her lip and handed the paper back to him. What's wrong? The old man was bewildered. Feng Wu said, if I sign this now, you'll send hitmen after me later. Chapter 640, The Big Secret. Chapter 640, The Big Secret? Why would I? Grand Secretary Fong looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu had planned to tell Grand Secretary Fong the truth, or she wouldn't have deliberately jumped out of the dry well. She grinned at Grand Secretary Fong. Haven't you been searching for the secret of this manor? Grand Secretary Fong's pupils contracted at Feng Wu's words. Do you know anything about that? He found Feng Wu's question dubious. Feng Wu nodded. I do. The look on Grand Secretary Fong's face changed instantly. He couldn't believe it. No one who had lived in this manor had been able to find the secret, How could a girl as young as Feng Wu? Follow me, please. Feng Wu took the old man by his hand and led him to the dry well. The old man was confused. Now jump. Feng Wu was going to take the old man down the well with her. The old steward interjected, Miss Feng Wu, please don't. My old master is. However, Grand Secretary Feng cut him short. I'm sure Xiao Wu has her reasons. I'll go have a look. Being a free spirit, Grand Secretary Feng had only become more capricious these days and wouldn't haggle over trifles. No one would expect the once Grand Secretary of the Empire to do such a reckless thing. He felt something strange as soon as they landed at the bottom of the dry well. Feng Wu tilted her head and grinned. Old master, can you feel anything different? The spiritual essence down here seems to be denser? Is this a place designed for cultivation? Grand Secretary Feng looked pleasantly surprised. Feng Wu snapped her fingers. Feng Tutu dashed off from Feng Wu's chest pocket and began to dig into the ground. However, Grand Secretary Feng's attention had been drawn to the walls of the well. As he felt his way around, he cried out in surprise. The rocks used to build these walls are really unusual. They look like crude spiritual stones. Wait, they are crude spiritual stones. Grand Secretary Feng was pleasantly surprised. So, this well was built with crude spiritual stones. How extravagant! Feng Wu only smiled. The old man sighed with emotion. If my guess is correct, these are all crude top-grade spiritual stones. Gosh, that's incredible. The stones alone are worth more than this manor. Kiddo, you've got sharp eyes. Feng Wu was still grinning. Just then, there was a whooshing sound. Feng Tutu jumped out from under the ground and ran up to Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng's eyes widened at the sight of Feng Tutu. Right now, Feng Tutu had a bib around its neck, which resembled the pouch of a kangaroo. In its mouth was a spiritual stone, and the pocket of the bib was filled with spiritual stones as well. Grand Secretary Feng. As experienced as the old man was, he had rarely seen such high-quality spiritual stones before. This, Grand Secretary Feng was surprised. Old master, what do you think of these stones? Picking up Feng Tutu, Feng Wu put the cub in Grand Secretary Feng's hands. With the top-grade spiritual stone in its mouth, Feng Tutu looked like it was eating a pancake. Its eyes were so innocent and it had such a confused look on its face. Taking a stone out of Feng Tutu's bib, Grand Secretary Feng looked at it closely. He was even more amazed. They're top-grade spiritual stones, every single one of them. Xiao Wu where? Chapter 641, I'll take it. Chapter 641, I'll take it. Old master, you've seen it yourself, Feng Wu said in a calm, earnest tone as she gestured at their surroundings at the bottom of the well. She was right. There was no reason for Grand Secretary Feng to doubt her. What's underneath here? Putting an open palm on the ground, Grand Secretary Feng extended his spiritual essence downward. Beyond layer of rocks, he reached an open space. Grand Secretary Feng's sight was filled with green, as in the color of the best jade stones. This, even a man like him, who had seen his fair share of the world, couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Are they all spiritual stones? Beneath this manor? Judging by the consistency of the color, they were all medium grade or above. Feng Wu nodded with a smile. Grand Secretary Feng didn't know what to say. He was so astonished that his knees buckled and he fell on his butt on the ground. Old master, you! Feng Wu wanted to help him to his feet, but the old man waved her off. No, please don't. He expanded his search from the dry well as the center. At first, he thought that there were spiritual stones stashed underground, but what he discovered after his investigation took him by surprise. It's a lode and an unmined one. Feng Wu nodded. The old man took a deep breath. That's just so. He had never expected this to be the secret that the family had been trying to figure out for generations. Grand Secretary Fong had investigated the underground area before and had even dug up the ground, but those attempts had all been futile. He only realized today that it was because he had used the wrong entrance. This dry well was the real entrance to that lode. Kiddo, you really are. Was this what a Phoenix girl was like? Exactly how lucky was she? How did you find out? Grand Secretary Fong was much calmer after coming back up from the dry well, and he asked Feng Wu the question with a smile. Feng Wu shrugged. I was sitting on the wall one day and I saw a flash in that dry well. Based on the time, the direction, and the terrain, I was pretty sure I knew what it was. Moreover, there was Feng Tutu. Feng Wu rubbed the cub's head. Treasure hunting is in its nature. It went in and came back up with a top-grade spiritual stone. There was no question. We have a load of top-grade spiritual stones under our feet. But you still declined my offer when you know what's hidden underground. Grand Secretary Fong sighed with emotion. In terms of money, the spiritual stones down there was worth the income of a small country. However, not only had the girl refused the gift, she also shared the secret with him. Grand Secretary Fong had always liked the kid, and now, he thought the world of her. More importantly, she was kind and had a noble heart. Who wouldn't like such a child? Sign this. Grand Secretary Fong handed Feng Wu the grant agreement. Feng Wu's eyes opened wide. Old master, do you know what you're doing? You have a top-grade spiritual stone lode under your house, and you're giving everything to me? Grand Secretary Fong said grumpily, you shared such a big secret with me. I'm not going to act like a stingy man. Others have searched for generations, but remained clueless. Whereas you did nothing but sit on that wall and you solved the mystery. That's just fate. Or, shall we say, the lode was meant to be yours all along. Chapter 642 Mu Jiuzhou. Chapter 642 Mu Jiuzhou. Grand Secretary Fong sighed. At this point in my life, I'm happy enough to know what that secret is. It would be too greedy of me to try to keep it to myself. I might lose a few years of my life if I did that. Now sign this, please. Seeing that the old man was sincere in his offer, Feng Wu thought that she would look contentious if she continued to decline it. Feng Wu was a free spirit herself, and she nodded. Old master, I'll take it. She could always treat Grand Secretary Fong even nicer and take care of him for as long as he lived. Good, good. Grand Secretary Fong was delighted, and decided to share a secret with Feng Wu. Guess what? I did quite a lot of research, and I discovered a legend about this land under our feet. A legend? Feng Wu batted her eyelashes, which reminded one of two little fans. Have you heard of Mu Jiuzhou, who once ruled this continent? Grand Secretary Fong's tone was full of respect. Mu Jiuzhou? Feng Wu's eyes widened and her face stiffened with excitement. Of course she had. Mu Jiuzhou, the one-time ruler of the continent, was none other than her beautiful master, who was lying on a bed in her ring right now. Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Fong nervously. Needless to say, Grand Secretary Fong had no idea that the person he was gossiping about was close at hand. He went on, according to unofficial records, a long time ago, before the Junwu Empire was established, this land we're living in now had been destroyed once before, with everything burnt to the ground, and the great Mu Jiuzhou was the cause of the calamity. He single-handedly started a war that wiped out the continent? Feng Wu clenched her fists. Her beautiful master was awesome. Yes. He killed all 12 supreme cultivators of the continent, along with numerous capable people. Blood flowed like rivers and the whole continent was shaken. However, during that war, it was said that Mu Jiuzhou lost the person he treasured the most. He treasured the most? Who was that? Was it a man or a woman? Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Fong, feeling nervous. A woman, I suppose, Grand Secretary Fong said after some thought. None of this is official, and I'm not sure how accurate the record is. It's said that he lost the love of his life in that war, and he shed a teardrop for her. Grand Secretary Fong pointed at the dry well. Maybe the load was created out of that teardrop. Feng Wu was speechless. The love of his life, the love of his life. Who was she? Are you sure that Mu Jiuzhou used to have a woman he loved? Feng Wu asked quietly. Her head had gone blank and her chest felt hollow. That history was buried with all the fallen heroes, and so few people are still around to remember it. If we can find Mu Jiuzhou's pupils, perhaps they can tell us a few things. But, Grand Secretary Fong smiled bitterly. His pupils are probably the most superior rulers of different regions on this continent. They're so beyond our reach now. Feng Wu could think of nothing but her beautiful master's teardrop. Her ethereal, godlike beautiful master had cried for a woman. Who on earth was she? Feng Wu? Little Feng Wu? Grand Secretary Fong poked Feng Wu's forehead with a finger. Yes. Feng Wu came back to herself. You were saying. Nothing, really. Grand Secretary Fong waved his hand. The exam results will be out today, and you should head back home. You're going to have a busy day with all the people rushing over to congratulate you. Feng Wu gave him a wry smile. She didn't think that would happen. Chapter 643 Feng Wu, the Legendary Genius. Chapter 643 Feng Wu, the Legendary Genius. However, she decided to go back home now, so that she could keep an eye on Lady Wang, in case the woman tried to target her again. Uncle Chiu and Chiuling had left already, for Feng Wu's exam result was the most important thing to them at the moment. As soon as they left, Chaoga dragged Feng Wu out to see the results as well. There was a huge crowd outside the gate of Imperial College. Uncle Chiu, there are so many people. We can't get close enough. Chiuling jumped and pushed, but it was too packed for her to make her way through the crowd. People kept getting pushed back and forth in the crowd. Those who made it in laughed and those who failed cried. Uncle Chiu, look. There are people from the Mu family. Mu Yaoyao was a candidate and her family had sent people out here early that morning. And the Duan family too. Chiuling then spotted the sisters of the Duan family. Everyone took the exam very seriously. The results are out. Just then, the gate opened and a team of people wearing a special uniform of Imperial College came out. The scroll in their hands was so long that it took all 10 of them together to put it up. The results. Look. Many began to push forward frantically. In order to see the results before anyone else, Chiuling pushed with all her might. It was too dangerous. Feng Wu reached out and pulled her back. Miss. Chiuling was thrilled to see Feng Wu. Miss Wu, the results are out. Let me check it for you. Let me go in. Feng Wu looked at her petite maid in resignation. Are you trying to kill yourself? Look at that crowd. You're not going anywhere. But. No buts. Stay put. Miss, don't you want to know the result? Feng Wu snapped. I know the result. I'm first. There's no need to push through all those people. She was only telling the truth, but they weren't the only people here. Feng Wu heard a snicker as soon as she said those words. She and Chaoga turned around to find the sisters of the Duan family. Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue. Their servants had run into the crowd to check the results, and the two of them were waiting in the shade. It just so happened that they were standing next to Feng Wu and overheard her. Oh my, I was wondering who said that. Isn't it Feng Wu, the legendary genius? Duan Chaoyin giggled. What did I hear? Feng Wu said she was first? Duan Chaoyue snickered. Chaoga flared up at the sight of the two girls and she glared at them. Hey! Duan Chaoyue! Duan Chaoyin! What are you laughing at? Duan Chaoyin smiled at Duan Chaoyue. Some people are just so stupid. We've been laughing for so long, and she doesn't even know what it's about. Duan Chaoyue tittered. Chaoga raised her hand in a threatening manner. But Duan Chaoyin wasn't intimidated, nor was she afraid of the humiliation. For to her mind, Feng Wu and Chaoga would be even more humiliated. Everyone, look, Feng Wu the genius wants to beat us up because she didn't get into Imperial College. Feng Wu the genius. Most people wouldn't have paid any attention if Duan Chaoyin hadn't mentioned Feng Wu's name. After all, everyone only cared about looking for their names on that list. Chapter 644 More Laughter. Chapter 644 More Laughter. But Feng Wu the genius. Which Feng Wu? That Feng Wu, the one who was mistaken for using a fake exam permit. What genius? Isn't she crippled? She can think of herself as a genius all she wants. What did I hear? Feng Wu the genius failed the exam? What do you expect? It's only natural that she failed. Instantly, all eyes were on Feng Wu. Well, I was wondering who was making all the noise. It was you. A voice rang out behind Feng Wu. It was kind of familiar, but not really. Feng Wu turned her head and recognized the person. It was Yi Yifei, the one who had had a confrontation with Feng Wu before. She was already a first-year student at Imperial College, but those around her were all candidates this year, and she was their leader. Behind her were Hua Yin and the others. Yi Yifei had been grounded by her family for a while because of what happened at World Tower. Hence, she held Feng Wu responsible for it. Feng Wu, do you have no shame at all? How dare you say you can get into Imperial College? Duan Chaoyin was delighted to have an ally and she smirked. Get into Imperial College? According to her, she got the highest score in the exam. Ha 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 ha! All four people behind Yi Yifei guffawed. Yi Yifei laughed until she was in tears. Passing the exam is already impossible for you. Getting the highest score? Gosh, Feng Wu, have you been practicing how to be more shameless all these years? Before Feng Wu replied, Chaoga retorted, You people are all idiots. Xiao Wu is first, so what? You're all just jealous. Ha 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 ha. First? Feng Wu? Mu Yaoyao heard the noise and came up to them. She arrived just in time to hear what Duan Chaoga said, and she cracked up. I'll give Feng Wu my head if she gets the highest score in the written exam. You mean it? Feng Wu spoke for the first time. She fixed her gaze on Mu Yaoyao with a tiny smile on her face. Mu Yaoyao was very confident about her source of information. She had searched from the first name to the last on that list, which had come out of Imperial College earlier. And Feng Wu's name wasn't there. So, she smirked. Deal. I'll cut my head off if you're first in the written exam. Make it into a stool or a football all you want. But if you're not... Putting her hands behind her back, Mu Yaoyao darted a contemptuous look at Feng Wu. Her voice turned cold. I'll cut your head off. Everyone's stomachs lurched. That was a big deal. Just then, Lady Wang and Feng Lu arrived at the scene. Feng Lu was going to join the fight, but Lady Wang stopped her with a shake of her head. Mu Yaoyao was challenging Feng Wu and that was great. Chaoga tugged at Feng Wu nervously. Qiuling and Feng Xiaoqi also looked at Feng Wu, both concerned. Sister, don't. Feng Xiaoqi tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve and shook his head repeatedly. Sister, her head isn't worth it. Yours is much more precious. Just ignore her. The onlookers guffawed. Mu Yaoyao was infuriated. Chapter 645 Was Feng Wu on the list? Chapter 645 Was Feng Wu on the list? The boy said that her life wasn't as valuable as Feng Wu's. She was a princess and the daughter of Lord Mu. Feng Wu was nothing but a cripple. Mu Yaoyao smirked. Feng Wu, are you in or not? Feng Wu shook her head. Well, I don't mind the bet, but what if you deny it afterward? I swear upon this. Mu Yaoyao smacked a wooden token of the Mu Manor on the table. The servants had all gone off to see the list, and Feng Wu and the others were all waiting in a tea-house now. I, Mu Yaoyao, swear upon the honor of the Mu Manor. If I lose the bet and won't acknowledge it, my father will lose his title. Everyone here is witness. Mu Yaoyao glared at Feng Wu in a provoking manner. She wanted to kill Feng Wu right now. If Feng Wu took the bet, Mu Yaoyao would cut her head off later without hesitation. Witnesses aren't enough, said Feng Wu. Let's put it on paper. No problem. Mu Yaoyao was thrilled to hear that. You want it written down? You got it. Mu Yaoyao had someone fetch her a pen and paper, and she sat down to write. She finished in no time. Mu Yaoyao then handed the agreement to Feng Wu. Deal. After making sure that Mu Yaoyao had written down everything she said, Feng Wu nodded. The agreement was done in duplicate and everyone here was witness. Can we join in as well? Yi Yifei asked all of a sudden. Feng Wu glanced at Yi Yifei. What are your terms? I'm not betting with you. Your life is Princess Mu's already. I want Duan Chaoga. Yi Yifei still held a grudge against Duan Chaoga and she smirked. I'll destroy my cultivation achievements myself if Duan Chaoga gets into Imperial College this time. If she doesn't, she'll have to destroy hers. I'm betting against Duan Chaoga, too. Duan Chaoyin snorted. I'll do everything she asks if she gets in. Otherwise, she'll be my slave. You would like that, wouldn't you? Bring it on. Chaoga sneered. I'll take the bet. Just then. The results are out. The results are out. Mu Yaoyao's servant ran back to her in a hurry. Zhao Liang, how did I do? Mu Yaoyao asked in a confident voice. She had seen the earlier version of the list, and was very sure of herself. Princess, you're 98th, Zhao Liang said cheerfully. Princess, with that score, you'll be in the best class. The ranking wasn't the same as what Mu Yaoyao had read, but it was similar enough, which convinced her further. She kept her eyes on Feng Wu as she asked Zhao Liang the second question. So, did you see this Miss Feng Wu's name on that list? Mu Yaoyao's voice was full of sarcasm and contempt. Only the top 1,000 candidates' names were on that list and Feng Wu wasn't one of them. Hence, she would have Feng Wu's head today. Mu Yaoyao began to draw a dagger out of her sleeve. The sharp blade glinted in the sunlight. All eyes were on Zhao Liang, and they were waiting for him to say no. However, everyone was disappointed. Yes, Zhao Liang said affirmatively. Chapter 646, Who's First? Chapter 646, Who's First? What? Shocked, Mu Yaoyao's hand jolted and the sharp blade nicked her fingertip. But she couldn't care less about that. Glaring at Zhao Liang, she bellowed, What did you say? Huh. Frightened by Mu Yaoyao's bellow, Zhao Liang looked at his master in bewilderment. What did you say? Say it again. Is Feng Wu on that list? Mu Yaoyao approached Zhao Liang with the dagger in her hand. Zhao Liang was terrified. He had no idea what he had done wrong. He was only telling the truth. Why yes, Miss Feng Wu's name really is on that list. And it's the first name in the top row. Her name is bigger than anyone else's, with thicker strokes. Everyone has seen it. Mu Yaoyao almost had a stroke. Everyone else stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. The first name in the first row. In bigger writing than the others. And in thicker strokes. What did that mean? Isn't that only for the top candidate? Yi Yifei was still trying to digest the information. Wait, Feng Wu got the highest score? You've got to be kidding me. She's the least possible candidate. I bet Princess Mu's servant doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't believe it. Everyone was whispering at the same time. As the center of attention, Feng Wu only stood there with a calm smile on her face. She didn't seem disturbed at all. Tell me again, what's Feng Wu's ranking? Mu Yaoyao pointed her dagger at Zhao Liang. First, Zhao Liang was almost in tears. He was only telling the truth. Why was the princess acting like a crazy person? How could Mu Yaoyao not be? She had just made a very heavy bet. Ha 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 ha. No way. I don't believe it. Feng Wu can't be first. She just can't. I won't believe it even if you kill me. Mu Yaoyao guffawed. She had seen the list and Feng Wu wasn't even in the top 1,000. Just then, Yi Yifei's servant came back in a hurry. Miss. Yi Yifei cut him off in a loud voice. Hold it. Just tell me who's first. Yi Gui, Yi Yifei's servant, blurted out, Feng Wu. The first is Feng Wu, as in the phoenix soars above the land. It's quite a catchy name. Yi Yifei was rendered speechless. So was everyone else. No, Mu Yaoyao felt as if she had just been struck by a thunderbolt and her head was spinning. No, no, no. I don't believe it. I don't. She squeezed into the crowd like a wild animal. And she was still holding that dagger. The blade was very sharp and it could cut through anything. With the dagger in Mu Yaoyao's hand as she howled like a mad person, no one wanted to stand in her way. Hence, she managed to make her way through the crowd rather smoothly. As Mu Yaoyao rushed off to see the list, many began to study Feng Wu. The looks they gave her were a mix of suspicion, uneasiness, and bewilderment. Feng Wu passed the written exam? And got the highest score. No, it couldn't be. Something had to be wrong. Just then, Duan Chaoyin's maid came back as well, panting as she ran. Miss, I've seen the results. Everyone turned to her. Hold on. Tell us now, who's first? Chapter 647, The Mysterious Man. Chapter 647, The Mysterious Man. Xiaowan, the maid, was a timid girl. She was shaken by all the eyes on her. Feng Wu. She gave the answer. And everyone was shocked again. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. If only one person gave that answer, they might be lying, but these people had given the same answer repeatedly. Could all of them be lying? Just then, someone shouted at the crowd gathering around the list, Hey, who's first on that list? And the crowd shouted back in unison, Feng Wu. The sound resonated in the air. To say that Yi Yifei had drained of all color would be an understatement. And the same went for Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue. These people all stared at Feng Wu as if they had seen a ghost. How could this be? How? Why Feng Wu? They couldn't imagine how this could have happened. It was incredible. Meanwhile, Mu Yaoyao had arrived at the foot of the bulletin board where the list was posted. After pushing through the crowd, her hair was unkempt, her clothes disheveled, and her face contorted. She stared at the first name in the first row of the list. The name was written in thick strokes. And bigger than the other names. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. No matter how many times she rubbed her eyes, the name didn't change. She hadn't read it wrong. It was indeed Feng Wu. Feng Wu was first. No! Mu Yaoyao spat out a mouthful of blood onto the list. And the bright yellow paper was painted red. Everyone else failed to recognize her and they cried out in surprise. Who's the nutjob? Some loony who failed the exam, I think. Everyone can take the exam up to 3 times, no? Try again. Mu Yaoyao could barely stand still. Feng Wu was first, she was first. Her head spun and Mu Yaoyao almost fainted. Princess! Her servants rushed to her side in a hurry to stop her from falling. The others were shocked by her reaction. Who's that? Isn't she the princess of the Mu Manor? Princess Mu Yaoyao? But she's on that list. 98th, isn't it? What's with her anger? You missed the show. Princess Mu made a bet with Feng Wu. Really? On what? On whether or not Feng Wu could get in. Feng Wu? The Feng Wu? Of course she can't. Bah! Are you blind? Look, the first name on the list. Holy shit! Feng Wu. That's Feng Wu. You don't say. Princess Mu bet her own head, and she's in a lot of trouble now. Is she going to die now? Is it really Feng Wu? Could it be a mistake or something? Maybe it's a different person with the same name. A different person? Yes, that was possible. Mu Yaoyao, who almost had a nervous breakdown, saw hope again. However, you idiot! A different person? The names come with their serial numbers, okay? Feng Wu entered the exam on recommendation and her serial number is very unique. It's 10,001. Look, it's her name and her serial number. Mu Yaoyao blanched. Meanwhile, a few steps away. Chapter 648, Your Majesty. Chapter 648, Your Majesty. It was an old man wearing a skullcap and a casual outfit, but his eyes looked exceptionally sagacious. Behind him was an elderly steward, who was bent respectfully toward his master. If one looked closely, they would spot quite a few capable cultivators, who were scanning the perimeter with their piercing eyes. They were scattered among the crowd and looking in different directions, but they always kept an eye on the wise-looking old man. The old man himself was rather relaxed and even tried to strike up a conversation with those around him. He asked curiously, "Did this Princess Mu really bet her own life?" The onlooker he asked was the gossipy type, who pulled the old man a little further away from the crowd before whispering in an excited voice, "Oh yeah, she did. They put it down on paper." The sagacious old man looked intrigued. "Did they?" "Sir, you've asked the right person. I witnessed the whole thing. Here's what happened. Princess Mu here provoked Miss Feng Wu first, saying that she would cut her whole head off and give it to Miss Feng Wu as a football if Miss Feng Wu could make it onto the list this time." "Oh my," the old man cried out in surprise. "That's right. Miss Feng Wu didn't respond at first, but Princess Mu wouldn't let it drop. She practically forced Miss Feng Wu to say yes. What was more, Princess Mu Yaoyao even made a solemn oath, saying that if she refused to acknowledge the bet afterward, her father would lose his title." The old man sounded shocked. "Seriously?" The chief steward looked up at the sky in resignation. "Isn't it a little inappropriate to gossip like this, Your Majesty?" Naturally, the onlooker had no idea that he was talking to the Emperor, and he went on in high spirits. "Yes, seriously. Princess Mu just dug her own grave, if you ask me. I'm looking forward to seeing her cut her own head off, ha 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 ha. Well, I'm off. They're going back to the tea house and I need to get there before the front row seats are taken." "Which tea house?" "Why, you want to go, too? Come with me, then. It's just over there." Taking His Majesty's hand, the onlooker dragged the Emperor through the crowd. Speechless, the chief steward watched as his Emperor marched cheerfully into the crowd. Guards of the Secret Service narrowed their eyes in a threatening manner. With one sweep of their hands, this ignorant onlooker wouldn't know what killed him. They gave the chief steward inquiring looks. The chief steward shook his head. The best seats had been taken when Emperor Wu got there, and they could only stand in the second row. By then, everyone had learned that Feng Wu had gotten the highest score in the written exam. It wasn't another person with the same name, and she was unmistakably first. Throwing off the servants supporting her, Mu Yaoyao rushed up to Feng Wu with eyes that could spit fire. She ranted, "Feng Wu, you cheated!" All eyes were on Feng Wu after those words. So, she was able to get such good grades because she cheated in the exam. Hidden among the commoners in his skullcap and casual outfit, the Emperor looked at Mu Yaoyao in disappointment. He recalled that it was only the other day that the Empress had recommended this girl to him, praising the girl for how comely, docile, and well-behaved she was, so that the crown prince could consider the girl as a future imperial concubine. Chapter 649, More Face-Slapping. Chapter 649, More Face-Slapping. Seeing Mu Yaoyao with her unkempt hair, pale face, and frantic manner, Emperor Wu thought about his extraordinary son, and was furious. How dare his wife try to use such a woman to defile his Lin Yuan? The idea was abominable. However, Mu Yaoyao had no idea that His Majesty himself was in the crowd, nor did she know that she had had a chance of marrying Jun Linyuan. Right now, she just wanted to do as she pleased. She pointed at Feng Wu. Cheater! You're a cheater! Feng Wu smiled. Princess Mu, everyone has to take responsibility for what they say and do. You can't take back your words. You know that, right? Now, Princess Mu, please tell everyone when I cheated. How did I do it? And where is your evidence? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and her gaze was as sharp as a cold blade. Under her intimidating stare, Mu Yaoyao cringed and stumbled back. She yelled, You just cheated. Answer my question. Feng Wu was still smiling. Of course Mu Yaoyao had no evidence. She was only giving vent to her frustration. Tell everyone this. Were we in the same examination hall? Feng Wu smirked. Yes. And His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu were in the hall with us. Yes. So, you're telling me that someone could cheat in the exam with both His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu as invigilators? Is that possible? Of course not. Mu Yaoyao answered involuntarily. And you're still insisting that I cheated? Mu Yaoyao stammered. I mean that it happened after we handed in the exam papers. Really? Princess Mu, you're so well connected. Common candidates like me have no idea what happens after our exam papers are handed in, but you actually have access to someone inside. Mu Yaoyao was speechless. As Feng Wu pressed on, Mu Yaoyao fell back and was on the verge of breaking down. I have no such access. I just heard people talking. Really? What did you hear, then? You heard about me cheating on the exam? Well, they showed me a list before and you weren't on it. A previous list? Feng Wu smiled. Did Imperial College come up with a list before the official announcement? Who gave you that? Mr. Zhua? Yes. It was Mr. Zhua. Mu Yaoyao tried to intimidate Feng Wu with Mr. Zhua's name. She tossed a piece of paper at Feng Wu. See? You're not on this list. Your name was added afterward. You cheated. Emperor Wu snorted. Zhuahe. It was so audacious of him to leak such information. Your Majesty? The chief steward was waiting for further instructions. Emperor Wu nodded. Hence, in less than a minute. Someone cried out in the crowd. Someone's coming out from Imperial College. Look, they're putting up something else. Mu Yaoyao rejoiced. Holy shit! Was Imperial College disqualifying Feng Wu because she called her a cheater just then? However, Mu Yaoyao almost fainted when someone began to read the new announcement aloud. It was very succinct. Zhuahe was dismissed from his job for gross misconduct and for harming a student during the 3 days he served as the acting principal of Imperial College. He had been removed from his office as a member of the Education Board and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Chapter 650. You're hounding me to death. Chapter 650. You're hounding me to death. Mu Yaoyao was speechless. And everyone was taken by surprise. Mr. Zhua? Gross misconduct? What kind of misconduct? And which student had he harmed? Shortly after the new announcement was posted, someone came out of Imperial College to put up a new post. That's an exam paper. Imperial College is putting up someone's exam paper. Look, it's serial number 10001 and the name says Feng Wu. It's Feng Wu's paper. Holy shit. Look at her handwriting. She deserves to get full marks for that handwriting alone. Oh God. Look at her answers. They're excellent. The memorization questions aren't that big a surprise, but she got all the multiple choice questions right. And there's section 4. I never knew that cracking ground can be used in that way. She's got remarkable knowledge of formations and medicine refinement as well. Yes, I see it now. I know what happened. The onlooker, who had been talking to Emperor Wu, tugged at the latter's sleeve in excitement. What do you see? Emperor Wu asked with a half-smile. Didn't you hear? According to Princess Mu, she read the list Mr. Zwa circulated earlier and Feng Wu wasn't on it. Feng Wu didn't have a lower ranking, but had been excluded from the top 1,000. She had been removed from the competition completely. Emperor Wu nodded. The onlooker was greatly excited by his realization. But they've just put up Feng Wu's exam paper. With His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu as the invigilators, there's no way Feng Wu could have cheated, right? Emperor Wu said, "Of course not. This is it then. This is proof of Feng Wu's true capability. She got full marks and no one can question a thing. But she didn't even get into the first 1,000 in Mr. Zwa's list. That malpractice was Mr. Zwa's doing. He harmed a student and was removed from his post for misconduct. That was what he did." The others around them were enlightened. "You're so right. That makes sense. We were wondering just then. Who knew Mr. Zwa could do such a thing? That Zwa family is unbelievable." A few steps away, the people from the Zwa family lowered their heads and quietly left the scene. No one would have connected Mr. Zwa's misconduct with his disciplinary fraud in the exam, but after what Mu Yaoyao did, everyone now knew what the Zwa family had been up to. It was all thanks to Princess Mu and the Mu Manor. Meanwhile, Mu Yaoyao stood there, dazed. She hadn't seen that new announcement coming at all. Crossing her arms, Feng Wu grinned at Mu Yaoyao. "See that? What do you want?" Mu Yaoyao glared at Feng Wu. "Nothing, really." Feng Wu shrugged. "I'm wondering when are you going to honor our bet?" Mu Yaoyao was speechless. All eyes were on Mu Yaoyao now. Would she keep her promise? Mu Yaoyao kept her gaze on Feng Wu. "You want me dead, then?" Feng Wu shrugged again. "Princess Mu, you forced me to take the bet and I'm the bad guy now? Luckily, everyone here is a witness, or you might actually pin the thing on me. So..." Feng Wu waved the agreement at her. "Princess Mu, when do I get to play with your head as a football?" You. Mu Yaoyao had never felt this humiliated before. Everyone was looking at her as if she was a clown, and the looks they gave her were full of contempt and ridicule. "You're hounding me to death here." Mu Yaoyao pointed at the crowd. You and you lot. You're all in so much trouble." Chapter 651 Face Lapping continued. Chapter 651 Face Lapping continued. Princess Mu promptly turned to leave after blurting out those words. She left just like that. Everyone stared at Mu Yaoyao. What about her bet? She had bet her own head. Had she forgotten about it? "Hey, Princess Mu, what about that head? Princess Mu, you're supposed to cut your head off, right? Princess Mu, we won't stop you, but you've got to leave your head behind. Ha 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 ha." In her exasperation, Mu Yaoyao had insulted everyone and the crowd turned against her. Mu Yaoyao stumbled and almost lost her footing. She was only able to stop from falling because someone in the crowd steadied her. Humph! Cheeks flushed, Mu Yaoyao ran away as fast as she could. The crowd sneered in contempt. Princess Mu didn't even try to keep her promise. That's right. She really didn't behave like a princess at all, running off like that. She didn't just run off. She accused us of wanting her dead. What did we do? She did it to herself. If she has the courage to apologize to Miss Feng for what she said, I'll respect her a lot for it. But what she did was just so disgraceful. Are all princesses nowadays like this? Everyone was talking at the same time. Just when they all thought that Mu Yaoyao had run off from the humiliation, she doubled back shortly afterward. She came back. Look, Princess Mu is back. Is she going to apologize to Miss Feng? Instantly, all eyes were on Mu Yaoyao. She rushed to Feng Wu's side, snorted, then grabbed Yi Yifei by the wrist. Didn't you make a bet with Duan Chaoga just then? Why yes, Yi Yifei was still in shock. And you too, right? Mu Yaoyao glared at Duan Chaoyin. Duan Chaoyin said, why yes. Good. Mu Yaoyao sneered at Feng Wu. Wasn't Duan Chaoga going to destroy her own cultivation if she lost the bet? Well, I'll keep my promise if she keeps hers. The idea came to Mu Yaoyao just then, and she thought it was the only way to turn things around. Wasn't Feng Wu forcing her to keep her promise to cut her head off? Fine. That Duan Chaoga that Feng Wu was so protective of was going to lose. Make her keep her promise now. Why are you asking me to keep my promise when Duan Chaoga won't? That's just double standards, Mu Yaoyao said in a righteous tone. Duan Chaoga? Everyone turned to look at Duan Chaoga. The confrontation between Feng Wu and Mu Yaoyao was so eye-catching that everyone had forgotten about the bet Duan Chaoga had made with Duan Chaoyin and Yi Yifei. So, if Chaoga keeps her word, you'll keep yours? Feng Wu smiled. Naturally. Mu Yaoyao stuck out her chest and spoke in a confident voice, her eyes shining. What they said was right. She couldn't leave this place like a defeated dog. It would be such a blow for the Mu manor. But Chaoga did get in. Feng Wu shrugged. Although she hadn't checked the list, Feng Wu had helped Chaoga cheat in the exam, and she knew exactly how many marks Chaoga had gotten. Ha 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 ha! Chapter 652, The Face Slapping Hasn't Stopped. Chapter 652, The Face Slapping Hasn't Stopped. Duan Chaoyin, who had kept her silence, finally laughed out loud. She said to Feng Wu, Miss Feng Wu, you can have as much confidence in yourself as you want, but as for Duan Chaoga, I'm afraid you've made the wrong judgment. Really? Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. Duan Chaoga is my younger sister from a different mother, and I know her better than anyone else. All she could write down on that paper was her name. Pass the written exam? That's never going to happen. Yi Yifei chuckled as well. I'll be a royal princess before Duan Chaoga passes the written exam. Duan Chaoyin added, I'll be the Empress if she passes. In the crowd, Emperor Wu's face darkened. But the two girls weren't aware of it. Seeing the look on His Majesty's face, the chief steward knew that he was offended. The chief steward said a silent prayer for the heads of the Duan and Yi clans. Miss, Duan Chaoyin's maid tugged her sleeve. Miss passed, the maid tried to drop a hint. Duan Chaoyin arrogantly said, I know I passed. Xiao Wan was almost in tears. Miss, your sister passed. What? Those words rumbled like thunder in Duan Chaoyin's ears. After all, only a handful of people had been able to see the list that Mr. Zhua had leaked. Mu Yaoyao was one of them, but her servants were so considerate that they had crossed out Duan Chaoga's name in advance, so as not to upset their master. Hence, Mu Yaoyao missed Duan Chaoga's name. Hence, everyone turned to look at Duan Chaoga now. The onlookers were all eager for more gossip, and people started yelling immediately. Duan Chaoga? She's on the list. She didn't pass? Says who? She's the second name on the list, and it's written in bold strokes, too. Why did Princess Mu think that Duan Chaoga failed? Is she blind or something? And those two girls, why are they still talking nonsense? The crowd looked at Mu Yaoyao, Duan Chaoyin, and Yi Yifei as if they were clowns. The three girls looked at one another in bewilderment before turning to their servants. Miss, Xiao Wan was almost in tears. Duan Chaoga is second. Mu Yaoyao spat out a mouthful of blood. But Duan Chaoyin was the most astonished. After living under the same roof for so many years, she knew perfectly well what Duan Chaoga was like. That girl was hopeless when it came to exams. But she got the second highest score? Just behind Feng Wu? No. That's impossible. I won't believe it. There's no way Duan Chaoga is second. She knows nothing. She can't even get into the first 2,000, let alone be second. However, the others only snorted at her in return. Duan Chaoga really is second in the written exam. Everyone gave her that answer. Wait, is she Duan Chaoyin? I think so. Her maid called her Miss, didn't she? Why didn't I see her name up there? I think I did. There, in the last 100. Isn't that Duan Chowing? No. That's Duan Chowndwe. There's no Duan Chowing on the list. Duan Chowing was dumbfounded when she heard that. What the hell? Chapter 653 A Sudden Turn of Events. Chapter 653 A Sudden Turn of Events. She had yet to recover from the shock of Duan Chowga getting the second highest score when she learned that she herself hadn't gotten in. She couldn't believe it. Duan Chowing turned to stare at Xiaohuan. Xiaohuan almost burst into tears, but she still said, "Miss, your name really isn't on the list." Duan Chowing couldn't take the blow and almost fainted. Miss, your name isn't on the list, but your sister's is." Xiaohuan really shouldn't have mentioned that. Duan Chowing spat out a mouthful of blood as soon as she heard it. Miss. Duan Chowing passed out from anger. The crowd was speechless. In the crowd, Emperor Wu shook his head at Duan Chowing, who had fainted from anger. That girl needs to work on her tolerance. Which family is she from? Her father is Duan Hongyi, a fourth-ranked official, the chief steward whispered in Emperor Wu's ear. Emperor Wu recalled the person at the reminder. He shook his head. Duan Hongyi is a decent government official, but he's not as good when it comes to raising his children. This daughter of his isn't presentable at all. The chief steward said another silent prayer, this time for Master Duan. But that Duan Chowga is a nice girl. Is she Duan Hongyi's daughter too? Yes, because of Feng Wu, the chief steward had been keeping an eye on Duan Chowga as well. Miss Duan Chowga is Duan Hongyi's third daughter, but her mother is a concubine and her family bullies her. Emperor Wu frowned. Duan Hongyi is such a poor judge of character. The chief steward felt even more sorry for this Master Duan now. His Majesty had just criticized him on his judgment of character. A fourth-ranked official was probably the highest Duan Hongyi was ever going to go. With Mu Yaoyao and Duan Chowing spitting out blood, Yi Yifei was the only one on her feet, but she didn't look any better. Yi Yifei, right? Feng Wu glanced at her. Feng Wu. What do you want from me? Feng Wu smiled. Those two passed out from fear and they can wait, but what did you say just then? You'll cut an arm off if Chowga gets in? But... Yi Yifei read the agreement about her bet and her eyes lit up all of a sudden. She shouted, "But... you've only just passed the written exam. There's still the physical tryout to go. I'll cut my arm off if you pass that and get into Imperial College." Feng Wu frowned. Yi Yifei was thrilled as she pointed at the words on the agreement. "Look, it says get into Imperial College, not pass the written exam. Ha 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 ha. The bet is about getting accepted into Imperial College." Feng Wu darted a look at her agreement and saw that it was indeed the case. She hadn't noticed it when the agreement was drafted, for to her understanding, passing the written exam wasn't that different from getting into Imperial College. Mu Yaoyao and Duan Chowing had passed out. Of course, they were only pretending to have passed out. For if they didn't do that, Feng Wu would ask them to honor their bet. But Yi Yifei's words gave them some hope. Well, it gave them a lot more than some hope. Mu Yaoyao jumped to her feet. She stared at Feng Wu with a malicious smile on her face. "Feng Wu, the bet we made was for you to get into Imperial College, not pass the written exam. At least, that was what was written in the agreement." Chapter 654 You Like Her? Chapter 654 You Like Her? Duan Chowing also swiftly rose to her feet and glanced at Feng Wu arrogantly. "Our bet is also about getting into Imperial College, not passing the written exam." The crowd was dumbfounded. No one had expected such a turn of events. The wording of an agreement was so important. The onlooker next to Emperor Wu frowned. Emperor Wu found the teenager rather amusing. "What's with the long face?" "Well, there's something you should know." The teenager smiled bitterly. "Feng Wu is a special case." "Really?" Emperor Wu raised an eyebrow, pretending not to know anything. The teenager sighed. Miss Feng Wu used to be this super genius girl, but she got unlucky and somehow she was crippled. She's just an ordinary person with no spiritual essence now. Here's the thing. Without spiritual essence, although she can still learn the theory, she'll be hopeless in actual combat. Miss Feng Wu is crippled physically, but it hasn't affected how smart she is. Yes. So, she was able to get the highest score in the written exam and got full mark. That's an unprecedented record. You're right. But she's lost her cultivation ability. I checked just then and I found out that she has no spiritual essence whatsoever. How is she going to get through the physical tryout? How is she going to get into Imperial College? The written exam only takes up 300 of the 1,000 points, and the physical tryout takes up 700. The teenager was genuinely concerned for Feng Wu, and he went on sighing. If Miss Feng Wu loses, they'll take her head. Seeing how indignant the teenager felt, Emperor Wu was amused. You're on Feng Wu's side then? Of course. You know her. This is my first time seeing her. Then why are you taking her side? Because she's beautiful. The teenager gave Emperor Wu a look, as if he was looking at an idiot. Don't you think so? Emperor Wu was speechless. He couldn't say no to that question. Moreover, don't you think that there's something about her that makes you want to like her? She just feels so comfortable to be around. The teenager tried to explain his feelings. Emperor Wu frowned. You like her? Who wouldn't like such a pretty girl? The teenager darted a bewildered look at Emperor Wu. Ahem, the chief steward cleared his throat. This teenager should really shut up now. Emperor Wu threw a dirty look at the chief steward, then turned back to the teenager. Don't you think she attracts too much attention from guys? Are you even listening to yourself? The teenager almost jumped to his feet. Sir, that's so inappropriate. Have you heard the expression, the flower will bloom with or without the wind? That's Miss Feng Wu. She's the flower, and the butterflies willingly fly toward her. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. The teenager snorted. I heard that His Royal Highness cancelled his engagement to Miss Feng Wu. If you ask me, His Royal Highness might always be right, but not this time. Emperor Wu asked, Really? How so? Look, Miss Feng Wu scored full marks in the exam. No one has ever been able to do that. She's like crazy smart. With her intelligence and the Crown Prince's talents, I bet they'd make the cleverest babies in history. It would be such a blessing to the Empire. Sigh, what a pity. Chapter 655 Impossible. Chapter 655 Impossible. The teenager sounded as if he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. Crossing his hands behind his back, he shook his head, sighed, and left the square. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. Rubbing his chin, he murmured to himself, Would Feng Wu be an ideal match for my son? It was too great a matter for the chief steward to offer any opinion on it. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was dealing with Mu Yaoyao and Duan Chaoyin. Look, it says in the agreement that you have to be accepted by Imperial College. Ha ha ha, Feng Wu, are you still going to bet? Mu Yaoyao had long wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and her eyes looked like they were spitting fire. She knew better than anyone else that Feng Wu was a cripple without any trace of spiritual essence. The girl thought she could pass the physical tryout? In her dreams. Feng Wu darted a casual look at Mu Yaoyao. You know, I'll say yes if you want to revoke that bet now. Revoke? Mu Yaoyao's eyes lit up. Feng Wu had to be scared. She wanted to cancel the bet. She had no confidence in herself at all. That was why she had made that suggestion. Mu Yaoyao cracked up inwardly. Feng Wu, do you remember how you wouldn't cut me any slack just then? Now that things were turning against her, she wanted out. No, we won't. Mu Yaoyao said without hesitation. Feng Wu frowned. Are you sure? This is your one chance. Ha 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 ha. Feng Wu, you're only saying that because you know you can't get into Imperial College. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to stick with my bet and I'll be laughing when I cut your head off. Mu Yaoyao's eyes flickered, satisfied with her impending revenge. Feng Wu looked at Duan Chaoyin and Yi Yifei. Those two had made a bet with Chaoga. Yi Yifei took a deep breath. Can I cancel mine? All eyes were on Yi Yifei right away. Yi Yifei said, I don't have that many grudges against Duan Chaoga, and it's really not worth losing an arm over. So, can I revoke my bet? More importantly, Yi Yifei had noticed that Duan Chaoga was a level 9 spiritual master already. The girl had only been a level 7 the last time they met, but she had made it to level 9 in no time. That was so scary. After everything that had happened, Yi Yifei wavered. Feng Wu let Chaoga make her own decision. Chaoga snorted. That's very smart of you. Well, you get to keep your arm for now. Shen then turned to Duan Chaoyin. What about you? Duan Chaoyin sneered. You really think you can get in? Of course I'm not going to give up on such a great opportunity. I'm still in on the bet. You'll have to destroy your own cultivation if you lose, and I'll do the same if I lose. Deal. Chaoga gave Feng Wu a nod. The crowd began to scatter. Lady Wang and Feng Lu exchanged looks. Both had yet to recover from the shocking news. Slowly they headed home. Mother, do you think it's true? Feng Lu came back to herself and stared at Lady Wang in bewilderment. Feng Wu is first? She got the highest mark? That's impossible. Impossible. Like many people, Feng Lu had been convinced that Feng Wu would never pass the written exam. Lady Wang was in a foul mood. Feng Lu's eyes flickered with a jealous look in them. Feng Wu wasn't on that first list. Her name was added afterward. I don't know what she did, but she only got on the list at a later stage. I won't believe that she didn't cheat. Chapter 656, You'll regret this. Chapter 656, You'll regret this. Lady Wang smiled bitterly. Whatever. She can take all the exams she wants, and it's her own business. Speaking of which, you better prepare yourself well, for after all, you were the last name on that previous list. The mother and daughter exchanged looks at those words. The 1000th. If Feng Lu had been the 1000th before, with Feng Wu added to the new list. Feng Lu panicked. She hadn't checked the list yet, for she had been so sure that she was on it. But now, I'll go have a look. Feng Lu couldn't even speak properly. She rushed toward the bulletin board. By now, not many people were around the board, for everyone who needed to see it had done so. Feng Lu began to search for her name on the list. She couldn't find it. She couldn't find Feng Lu anywhere. It can't be. How can I not be on it? Feng Lu was so flustered that she didn't know what to do. Lady Wang took a deep breath and tried her best to calm down. Don't panic. Let's have a look again. I'm sure you missed it. Yes. Let's have another look. Mum, you start from the top and I'll start from the bottom. Sure. The mother and daughter began to search for Feng Lu's name again. But they still couldn't find it. How can this happen? Feng Lu panicked like a duck in a thunderstorm, and she stood frozen on the spot, as if she had just been struck by a thunderbolt. In the Ministry of Official Personnel. Minister Feng, congratulations! Feng Yanfeng's colleagues cupped their fists at him. For what? Feng Yanfeng was bewildered. The daughter of the Feng family is a hit this time. She's the star of Imperial College's written exam. His colleagues explained. Imperial College? Written exam? The daughter of the Feng family? Feng Yanfeng thought about Feng Lu right away. Had Feng Lu outdone herself and broken her personal record? That daughter of your family got the highest score in the written exam. I think even His Royal Highness will think highly of such a talented candidate. Master Feng, you're sure to have a successful career. Feng Yanfeng was carried away by his own importance. Although he didn't think it possible, There didn't seem to be an alternative explanation. His daughter was a lucky girl after all. On his way back home, Feng Yanfeng couldn't stop smiling. Master Feng, a word please? Lord Wuan went up to Feng Yanfeng. Feng Yanfeng was a little confused. Lord Wuan and himself weren't from the same circle. What was this about? Lord Wuan only explained the purpose of his invitation after he showed Feng Yanfeng into World Tower. The Ning family has a marriage proposal? Feng Yanfeng took the hint right away. Lord Wuan was from an old noble family in the imperial capital and was quite the character himself. Instead of showing up at court for duty, he spent his days indulging in petty hobbies. However, he was quite popular in the imperial capital's social circle and was considered a reliable person. That's right, Lord Wuan smiled. Ning Chenxi, the son of the Ning family, wants no one but Feng Lu as his wife. They came to me to act as the go-between. Old Feng, do you have a preferred date? I'll tell the Ning family to officially propose to your daughter. Feng Yanfeng was going to accept the offer, but he recalled the congratulations he had received earlier, which changed his mind. He said with a smile, "Let's talk about it later, shall we?" Lord Wuan frowned. He had brought the good news himself, and this man was still stalling. As a matter of fact, Lord Wuan had heard about Feng Lu's controversial reputation before, but Ning Chenxi was very persistent. Seeing Feng Yanfeng's reaction, Lord Wuan wasn't pleased. Chapter 657 Face Slapping Again. Chapter 657 Face Slapping Again. Master Feng, are you not satisfied with the Ning family in any way? Lord Wuan frowned. That wasn't very polite of Feng Yanfeng. Did he realize what kind of people the Ning family were? Ning Xuan was a high-ranking official who was in charge of a border region, and the family was connected to Northern Feng Mansion by marriage. The Feng family should be filled with gratitude that such a family would want their daughter's hand in marriage. Assuming heirs? What was this Feng Yanfeng thinking? Lord Wuan found Feng Yanfeng very ungrateful. Had this happened yesterday, with Lord Wuan acting as the matchmaker, Feng Yanfeng wouldn't even have blinked before saying yes. But not now, not after the news Feng Yanfeng had heard from his co-workers. Feng Lu was first in the written exam and His Royal Highness had a thing for her? That was incredible. Feng Yanfeng didn't think he was too greedy. All he wanted was for His Royal Highness to take Feng Lu in as his imperial concubine. That would be the best thing that could ever happen to the Feng family. That would be much better than becoming Ning Chenxi's official wife. That was why Feng Yanfeng was stalling. After turning Lord Wuan down, Feng Yanfeng returned home, still excited. He spotted Lady Wang and Feng Lu as soon as he walked in. Lu Er. Feng Yanfeng was delighted to see Feng Lu and he patted her on her head and shoulder. Good girl. You made me very proud today. We would have given all the resources to you if we knew you had such potential. We wouldn't have wasted everything on Feng Wu back then. Feng Lu stared at Feng Yanfeng in confusion. What was that about? Feng Yanfeng went on, gloating. Girls aren't as important as boys? Says who? My Lu Er outdid all those boys out there. Kiddo, keep up the good work and be first in the physical tryout, too. The corner of Feng Lu's mouth twitched, and she exchanged looks with Lady Wang. Shit. This was a huge misunderstanding. Her father must have mistaken Feng Wu's accomplishment for hers. When he found out that Feng Lu didn't even get into the first 1,000 and wasn't qualified for the physical tryout, would that give her father a heart attack when he found out? But how was she supposed to correct him? Feng Lu couldn't bring herself to say it. It just so happened that Feng Wu and Chaoga came back at that moment and were chatting cheerfully. Feng Yanfeng flared up as soon as he saw Feng Wu. Stop laughing. Feng Yanfeng glared at Feng Wu and cast a stern look at her. How can you even bring yourself to laugh at this point? Feng Wu looked at Feng Yanfeng in bewilderment. What had gotten into her uncle now? And she wasn't the only one wondering. The others were equally baffled. Putting a hand behind his back, Feng Yanfeng said in the most arrogant manner, "Feng Wu, come here and congratulate your sister." Congratulate? Feng Lu? Feng Wu frowned. Feng Lu hadn't even gotten into the first 1,000. Was her uncle serious? Seeing the hesitant look on Feng Wu's face, Feng Yanfeng was annoyed. He snorted. Your sister outdid herself and gained such an achievement. As her sister, shouldn't you offer her your congratulations? Feng Lu's face twisted and she tugged at Feng Yanfeng's sleeve. Dad! Stop it! He was only humiliating her. Right, I forgot. You took the exam as well. How did you do? You failed, right? Feng Yanfeng said in resignation, Well, it's normal for you to have failed. You're a cripple. I wouldn't have expected otherwise. Stop stalling and congratulate your sister now. She might run this clan one day and your family will be at her mercy. I'd try to get along well with her if I were you. Feng Yanfeng meant every word and thought he was justified in his behavior. But Feng Wu only found him ridiculous. Chapter 658. That's too much. Chapter 658. That's too much. Feng Lu buried her face in her hands. Dad! Stop! Stop it, please! Feng Yanfeng looked at Feng Lu in confusion. She didn't want to say anything, but with Feng Yanfeng babbling on, she couldn't stand it anymore, especially when Feng Wu was around. Feng Lu stomped her foot. Dad! It's her. She's the one who got the highest score. Not me. What? Feng Yanfeng was dazed on the spot, as if he had just been electrocuted. No way. She's first? How is that even possible? He wouldn't believe it even if someone put a knife to his throat. Feng Wu got the highest mark in the written exam? Feng Yanfeng stared at Feng Lu. Feng Lu nodded grumpily. Feng Yanfeng then turned to Lady Wang. Despite her reluctance, Lady Wang nodded as well. No, Feng Yanfeng took the blow hard. But she's useless. The girl you call useless was first in the written exam. Chowga smirked. She would have long lost her temper if it wasn't for Feng Wu, who stopped her. What kind of uncle was this man? Had he lost his mind, asking Xiao Wu to fawn on Feng Lu? Feng Yanfeng looked embarrassed. Clearing his throat, he said, I got the facts mixed up, I guess. So, Feng Lu, what's your ranking? Feng Lu was speechless. What sort of father was he? Did he have to humiliate her like this in public? Seeing that Feng Lu wouldn't answer, Feng Yanfeng snapped, Your father asked you a question. Answer me. He needed to be saved from this embarrassment. But Feng Lu needed it more. She noticed the sneers Feng Wu and Chowga gave her and she couldn't take it anymore. She turned around and stormed off. Where is that abominable girl going? Feng Yanfeng asked angrily. Lady Wang rolled her eyes. Anywhere is better than staying here and being humiliated by you. Lady Wang left after that as well. Feng Yanfeng's face turned livid. What did he do? He only asked Feng Lu about her exam result and she was giving him attitude? Had she forgotten that he was the head of the family? Mr. Feng, Chowga said with a laugh, your daughter took the written exam, all right, but we searched the entire list and Feng Lu's name wasn't on it. Feng Yanfeng was astonished. Feng Wu was cracking up inwardly, but she still feigned a displeased tone. My uncle is upset enough. Don't add to his vexation. Let's go. She then dragged Chowga away, but the latter reminded Feng Yanfeng before they left, Mr. Feng, I think Feng Lu should really come and apologize to Xiao Wu later and try to get along well with her. After all, this clan will depend on Xiao Wu one day. Chowga threw everything Feng Yanfeng had said back at him. Feng Yanfeng's face was livid. His cheeks were blood red. Blue veins popped on his forehead. In Fallen Star Yard. Ha 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 ha. Taking a piece of fruit Xiuling had cut for her, Chowga guffawed as she ate. Oh God, that was so funny. The looks on the faces of Feng Lu, your aunt, and your uncle. Chowga patted her chest and stomped her foot, too excited to sit still. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. She snatched the fruit out of Chowga's hand, fearing that she might choke on it. 5 minutes later. Are you done laughing? Ha 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 ha. 10 minutes passed. Feng Wu looked at Chowga in resignation. Are you done laughing? Ha ha ha. That was just so funny. Chapter 659 Loaded with Honors. Chapter 659 Loaded with Honors. Half an hour later, Feng Wu looked at Chowga in resignation. The girl had laughed until she couldn't sit up. Chioling, rub my belly for me. Ouch, it hurts. I think I have cramps. Chowga turned to Chioling for help. Chioling chuckled as she offered Chowga a cup of Chioling tea. Hey, Chioling tea! Chowga jumped to her feet at the smell, grabbed the cup, and poured the tea into her mouth in one go. Ouch, that's hot! Chowga cried out, but went on drinking. Feng Wu looked at her in resignation. Slow down. The tea isn't going anywhere. Chowga rolled her eyes at Feng Wu as she fanned her mouth with her hands. I know that, but it's Chioling tea. How can I wait when something which smells this nice is around? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Well, since I've passed the written exam, I need to go back home and show off now. After finishing her fruit, Chowga was ready to leave. Feng Wu asked, Are you sure you won't end up fighting with those people? Chowga gloated. You'll see. She then returned home. By then, the news had gotten around and almost everyone had a copy of that list. And everyone was talking about it, from the court above to the masses below. The Duan Manor. Mrs. Duan almost had a nervous breakdown when she saw the list. That's impossible. I don't believe it. It shouldn't have happened. Mrs. Duan crumpled the paper into a ball. She was dumbfounded. Feng Wu is first? You've got to be kidding me. Mrs. Duan smirked at her husband. Feng Wu, the useless girl. She was known as Failure Wu. And she's first? This isn't happening. And second is Duan Chowga. Seriously? Mrs. Duan rolled her eyes. Our Chowga? Second? Master, can you believe this? Duan Hongyi didn't want to, but it was written on the list and he had no other choice. Maybe they outdid themselves? Duan Hongyi rubbed his chin. Heh! Mrs. Duan snorted. Someone who hands in blank answer sheets got full marks. Outdid is an understatement. What do you mean? They must have cheated. Mrs. Duan snorted. Rubbing his chin, Duan Hongyi was lost in his thoughts. Just then, footsteps came from outside. Miss Chowga is back. Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue rose to their feet in unison, and both looked alarmed. Well, what a coincidence. You're all here. Chowga smirked when she saw the family of four. Duan Chaoyin sneered. Oh my, you're back? I thought you died out there. Chowga snorted. You'd love that, wouldn't you? That's why you stopped Dad from saving me. You, Duan Chaoyin glared at Chowga. Chowga snorted. Am I wrong? Did you try to look for me afterward? Chowga sneered inwardly when she saw the astonished looks on their faces. Xiaowu was right. She had to make them feel guilty. That way, she would have the moral high ground. You, Duan Chaoyin pointed at Chowga. How dare you come back? Why can't I come back? Chowga gloated. I got the second highest score, of course I'd come back home, loaded with honors. You didn't even pass the written exam. How dare you disrespect me like this, telling me what to do? Chapter 660 You Jealous Losers. Chapter 660 You Jealous Losers. Duan Chaoyin had spat out blood once earlier that day and Chowga's sarcasm almost made her spit out blood again. Mrs. Duan wrung her handkerchief until it was nearly in shreds. Duan Chowga, is that how you talk to your sister? Chowga scoffed at Mrs. Duan. Quit your lousy act. You've always wanted me dead. My sister? Don't make me laugh. Mrs. Duan was rendered speechless. She swore that dealing with Duan Chaoga had significantly shortened her lifespan. Duan Hongyi's face was livid and he jumped to his feet. Duan Chaoga, you think so highly of yourself, don't you? Chaoga grinned. Well, I got the second highest score. I can think as highly of myself as I want. Bite me. Mrs. Duan and her 2 daughters had bullied and framed Chaoga more times than she could count over the years, to the point that even Chaoga pitied herself. Seeing how pissed the 3 women were now, Chaoga felt so bold and elated. Her luck had turned after Xiao Wu returned. Xiao Wu had to be her lucky star. Chaoga came back today just to piss the 3 women off. Seeing their heaving chests and livid faces, Chaoga was so satisfied. You cheated? Duan Chaoyin snorted. We know it. You cheated and I'm going to report you. Chaoga shrugged. With Xiao Wu around, no one could intimidate her. You can't answer a single question. You must have copied someone else's answers. It'll be so easy to prove. All they need to do is have you redo the exam. You'll be so dead. Really? I'm so scared. What are you waiting for? Chaoga wasn't worried at all. His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu monitored the exam themselves, and you're telling me that someone could have cheated during the exam? Go report me. Go report me now. I'd like to see you come back alive. Duan Hongyi cringed at the mention of Jun Linyuan. He only stared at Chaoga. How did you learn everything so quickly? Because I had a great teacher, Chaoga said proudly. A great teacher? Which teacher? Grand Secretary Fong, said Chaoga. Grand Secretary Fong had us memorize 1,000 books and read 10,000 more. According to the old master, we would get good grades if we remembered them all. Well, she hadn't remembered a single word, but Xiao Wu had. Grand Secretary Fong, Duan Hongyi cried out. Which Grand Secretary Fong? Is there another Grand Secretary Fong? The one that recently retired, obviously. As in Xian Yi's grandfather, Chaoga said casually. Grand Secretary Fong. Grand Secretary Fong. Grand Secretary Fong. Duan Hongyi clenched his fists. The great Grand Secretary Fong. The Grand Secretary Fong that used to be the head of all government officials. He had promoted more officials than one could count, and every single one of them was the head of a key department. If he could get on Grand Secretary Fong's wagon, his future would be so promising. At that thought, Duan Hongyi smacked his thigh. Well done, Chaoga. I'm so proud of you, my daughter. He then patted Chaoga on the shoulder. Kiddo, do you need anything? We'll do our best to support you. Chaoga was never the humble type, and she said without hesitation, with the physical tryout coming, I still need a lot of cultivation resources. Of course. Duan Hongyi had always tried to form a connection with Grand Secretary Fong, but could never find an opportunity to meet the old man. He now saw Chaoga as his big breakthrough. He showed Chaoga to the family vault right away. Take whatever you need. The Duan family wasn't from a major clan, but they had accumulated a considerable amount of resources over the years. There were plenty of spiritual stones in the vault as well. Chapter 661 Baffled. Chapter 661 Baffled. Chaoga stuffed her pockets with spiritual stones without hesitation. Mrs. Duan was furious. Master, we don't know that Chaoga will get into Imperial College for sure. It'll be such a waste. Chaoyue is going to join the physical tryout too. She'll need her resources. Duan Hongyi shoved Mrs. Duan to the side. What do you know? You're just a woman. As important as getting into Imperial College was, to Duan Hongyi, the top priority now was to make Grand Secretary Fong's acquaintance. His immediate superior at the moment was the subordinate of an official, who in turn was the subordinate of Grand Secretary Fong's once subordinate. He wouldn't have to worry about not getting a promotion ever again if he could get Grand Secretary Fong as a patron. Chaoga promptly left home after raiding the family vault, saying that she was going to see Grand Secretary Fong. Yes, of course. Duan Hongyi nodded repeatedly. Mrs. Duan and her 2 daughters were infuriated. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was at home and chatting with her beautiful mother when a distinguished guest arrived at the Feng clan. An invitation from Lady Northern Feng? Lady Wang was elated. Lady Northern Feng was a member of the upper class in the social circle of the noble ladies of the imperial capital. Lady Wang had been trying to make her acquaintance, but could never get a chance. She had never expected Lady Northern Feng to send the Feng clan an invitation. Lady Wang's and Feng Lu's eyes lit up. Was Lady Northern Feng reaching out to the Feng clan? After the frustration which Feng Wu had brought them earlier that day, this invitation cheered Lady Wang and Feng Lu up. What was more, the invitation was brought by Granny Tao, Lady Northern Feng's personal maid, herself. You didn't have to go through so much trouble, Granny Tao, not to mention all these gifts. Lady Wang smiled broadly. Lady Wang knew about the Ning family's marriage proposal and the relationship between Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning. She thought that Granny Tao was here to invite Feng Lu and herself over. Granny Tao scanned the room, then frowned. Is Miss Feng Lu the only young lady at home now? What was that supposed to mean? Lady Wang's heart sank. Do you mean? What about Miss Feng Wu? Is she at home? Despite Granny Tao's soft voice and kind smile, she gave off an air that was characteristic of servants from a noble house. The last thing one wanted to do was offend her. Feng Wu. Lady Wang felt her anger rise at the mention of that name. Of course, she would make sure that Feng Wu would never be part of something this great. Lady Wang answered with a smile, Xiao Wu has probably gone off somewhere. Sorry about that, but she's such a stubborn and unruly child. There's nothing gentle about her and she's never home. We never know where to find her. That was Lady Wang's usual strategy. With a smile on her face and in a casual tone, she smeared Feng Wu's reputation. Granny Tao's face darkened right away. And she snatched that invitation back. Lady Wang's pupils contracted. What was that supposed to mean? Rising to her feet, Granny Tao said coldly, Lady Wang, I see that you're rather reluctant to take me to Miss Feng Wu. I'll show myself in, then. Lady Wang was baffled. What on earth was going on here? Wasn't Granny Tao supposed to be here for her? To discuss the marriage between Ning Chenxi and Feng Lu? How did Feng Wu have anything to do with that? Lady Wang's face was livid. As Lady Northern Feng's chief maid, Granny Tao could give Lady Wang all the attitude she wanted and there was nothing Lady Wang could do about it. Chapter 662 With Child? Chapter 662 With Child? Grinding her teeth, Lady Wang sent Granny Gui out to keep an eye on Fallen Star Yard. It was where Granny Tao had gone. Feng Wu took a look at the invitation and was bewildered. Lady Northern Feng wants to see me? Why? Granny Tao showed much more enthusiasm toward Feng Wu. She smiled and said warmly, Miss Feng was first in the written exam and her ladyship is so happy for you. I was sent here to take you to her. Since Feng Wu had nothing better to do at the moment, she went off with Granny Tao. Outside, Granny Gui saw Feng Wu and Granny Tao come out of the yard together, with Granny Tao holding Feng Wu's arm in a deferential manner. Granny Gui's pupils contracted. She went to report to Lady Wang as soon as Feng Wu left. At the same time, Retch! 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 Feng Lu retched into her handkerchief. Lady Wang frowned. What's wrong? You were fine this morning. Why are you sick all of a sudden? Is it a stomach problem? You lot, go fetch the doctor now. Feng Lu's nose puckered up. I've been like this for a few days. I feel sick all the time, I've lost my appetite, and I'm always sleepy. This is so annoying. Lady Wang looked stumped for a moment. She stared at Feng Lu, as if she had just been struck by lightning. Why you? What? Feng Lu's stomach lurched. You. How long have you been like this? Lady Wang had forgotten to blink. Just a few days. When did Feng Wu come back? Lady Wang grabbed Feng Lu's arm with a desperate look in her eyes. 2 months ago, I think. Then you and Lady Wang's eyes pop. You. What did I do? You're not with child, are you? Lady Wang stared at Feng Lu. Feng Lu. Eyes wide open, Feng Lu looked like she was in a trance as she stood dazed on the spot. She put a hand on her belly. Could it really be? If that was the case. Oh God! Mum, what am I gonna do? Flustered, Feng Lu was at a loss. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was still so young and life had been smooth sailing for her. The news completely befuddled her. Lady Wang was no better. You fool! She jabbed Feng Lu's head with a finger. Feng Lu cried so hard that she couldn't say anything else. What's going on? Feng Yanfeng asked with a frown as he walked out of his study to find the mess outside. It suddenly occurred to him that starting from a short while ago, his wife didn't feel as pleasing as before. His voice made Lady Wang and Feng Lu jump. Lady Wang said in a hurry, Nothing, really. Lu Er has an upset stomach, that's all. We've sent for the doctor already. An upset stomach? Feng Yanfeng was feeling patient today, which was very rare for him. Come here. Let me feel your pulse. No. Feng Lu shook her head repeatedly and tears rolled down her cheek. Feng Yanfeng frowned. Why was the girl so touchy? Lady Wang hastily ushered Feng Yanfeng out of the room. The doctor is coming soon. Please don't let us keep you. Your official business is way more important. Seeing how badly Feng Lu was shaking, Feng Yanfeng frowned, put his hands behind his back, and grumpily left the room. Mum, what shall I do? If the doctor gets here and I'm really... I'd rather die. Feng Lu burst out crying. Lady Wang felt light-headed at her daughter's wail, and she thought she was going to pass out. Just then. Chapter 663. Ah Sun would be so lucky to have you as his wife. Chapter 663. Ah Sun would be so lucky to have you as his wife. The doctor arrived. An idea struck Lady Wang. Go hide behind the bed curtain. Now. When the doctor came in, Feng Lu only stuck a hand out without showing her face. Dr. Gu was well known in the imperial capital for his abilities. He looked delighted after feeling the pulse. Madam, congratulations. The patient is with child. Feng Lu shuddered. Lady Wang drained of all color as well. What? With child? It was really happening. Lady Wang felt the room spin in front of her eyes and she almost fainted. Feng Lu was really pregnant. What should they do now? Behind the curtain, Feng Lu wished that she could pass out now. That way, she wouldn't have to face the humiliation. Dr. Gu gave Lady Wang a suspicious look. What a strange family. Other families would be thrilled to hear the news, but people here in the Feng Manor looked as if the world was about to end. Lady Wang finally came back to herself. She squeezed out a smile, then asked a maid to see Dr. Gu out. Luckily, Granny Gue was as vigilant as ever. She stuffed a pouch filled with money into Dr. Gu's hand and said in a warning tone, No one else is to know about this. Feng Lu broke down as soon as the doctor left and she burst into tears. Seeing Feng Lu's reaction, Lady Wang was at a loss over what to do. Feng Wu had no idea of the drama going on back home. At that moment, she was on her way to Northern Feng Mansion, led by Granny Tao. Lady Northern Feng came out to greet Feng Wu at the front gate. The lady was elated to see Feng Wu. She hurried to Feng Wu's side and grinned. Kiddo, you've forgotten about me. You'd never come visit me if I didn't invite you over. Feng Wu only smiled. I've been busy preparing for the written exam. Lady Northern Feng's eyes lit up and she patted Feng Wu on the shoulder. You're amazing. You've surprised everyone. No one thought you'd apply for Imperial College, let alone get the highest score. That's so incredible. Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. It was only the written exam. Only the written exam? I was told that you're the first person ever to get full marks. Your name is going into the records. Xiao Wu, how can you be so smart? Lady Northern Feng looked Feng Wu up and down. The girl was pretty, smart, and adorable. She was perfect. The lady had wanted to set up a marriage agreement with Feng Wu when the latter was little, and that hope had never faded. Hence, she blurted out, Xiao Wu, Ah Sun would be so lucky to have you as his wife. Feng Wu was sipping her tea and she spat everything out at those words. Cough, cough. Feng Wu put down the cup in a hurry and Qiuling quickly wiped her hands with a handkerchief. Lady Northern Feng gave her a wry smile. I guess I don't have to ask anymore. You got so scared that you spat out your tea. Feng Wu waved her hands, looking flustered. No, it's not that. Lady Feng, I'm not good enough for young Lord Feng. Lady Northern Feng's eyes lit up. Are you saying that you'll marry Ah Sun when you think you're good enough for him? Feng Wu coughed again. Please don't take this the wrong way, Lady Feng, but the young lord is very picky. He'll never want me as his wife. Moreover, he's really stubborn and wants to find a girl himself. I'm afraid he'll become defiant if you try to make the decision for him. Recalling what a naughty little bugger Feng Sun was, Lady Northern Feng agreed with Feng Wu's reasoning. Chapter 664. This girl is a doctor who works miracles? Chapter 664. This girl is a doctor who works miracles. Lady Northern Feng raised an eyebrow at Feng Wu. I'll beat about the bush a little and see how he feels about you. Feng Wu picked up her cup, trying to change the subject. She noticed something on Lady Northern Feng's face and frowned. Noticing Feng Wu's unblinking gaze, Lady Northern Feng felt disturbed. Kiddo, why are you staring at me like that? It gives me the creeps. The frown on Feng Wu's face grew bigger. Your ladyship, I need to speak to you in private. Lady Northern Feng was bewildered. Why was the girl so serious all of a sudden? Since she had always liked and trusted Feng Wu, the lady dismissed all the maids so that Granny Tao was the only servant left in the room. Lady Feng Yu, Feng Wu asked after some hesitation. You sweat easily these days, don't you? Lady Northern Feng was surprised by the question and Granny Tao answer for her immediately. That's right. Her ladyship has been sweating profusely in her sleep in the past month, but she rarely sweats during the day. Does she wake up at midnight every day, covered in a cold sweat? Yes, that's right. Lady Northern Feng nodded in a hurry. That's exactly what's been going on. I've been jerking awake at midnight every day. I can always go back to sleep soon afterward, which is why I haven't thought much of it. How did you know that? Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Because midnight is when the yin and yang energies replace each other. Huh. Lady Northern Feng didn't know what that meant, but still felt concerned. Feng Wu then asked, do you occasionally feel dizzy when you get up in the morning these days? But the sensation goes away after a while? Yes. Lady Northern Feng nodded. Xiao Wu, you're spot on. I felt that way several mornings in a row and I sent for doctors. But they only told me that I was plagued by weakness and needed more rest. That was all they could say about my case. Feng Wu examined Lady Northern Feng's face, then leaned over and whispered in her ear, Has it been a while since you had your period? Lady Northern Feng's eyes widened. How did you know that? She looked at Granny Tao when she said that. Granny Tao smiled bitterly. Your ladyship, I would never tell Miss Wu such a private matter. Lady Northern Feng believed her. She then turned her sharp gaze on Feng Wu. How did you know that? Her menstrual cycle was so private a matter that the only other person who knew about it was a female medicine refiner in the Medicine Refiners Guild. Feng Wu shrugged. I can see it on your face. Lady Northern Feng wouldn't believe it. You're too young to be able to do that. I don't believe you. Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. If you let me check your pulse, I can tell you how long it's been since you had your period. Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Wu suspiciously. Feng Wu gave her another wry smile. Your ladyship, I wouldn't have involved myself in such a matter if it wasn't for your kindness toward me. That convinced Lady Northern Feng. The girl was wise in the ways of the world and played it safe. Bringing up this matter was already against her philosophy. All right, Lady Northern Feng raised her right arm and rested it on the table in front of Feng Wu. Even that female medicine refiner from the guild couldn't tell how long it had been since she had her period. How could Feng Wu know? Even Granny Tao wasn't so sure. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes as she checked the lady's pulse. She almost never actively tried to help a patient, but when she did, she would spare no effort. Chapter 665. The Most Exciting Moment. Chapter 665. The Most Exciting Moment. Lady Northern Feng and Granny Tao kept their gazes on Feng Wu, trying to decipher what the latter was thinking. In fact, both women had doubts. The girl was simply too young. Even the imperial physicians and the female medicine refiner from the guild didn't know what was wrong with the lady. What could this girl do? An elderly doctor with white hair and goatee looked a lot more trustworthy. Lady Northern Feng had no faith in Feng Wu. Neither did Granny Tao. They didn't expect Feng Wu to solve the problem. If they didn't have expectations, there would be no disappointment. Feng Wu drew back her hand in less than 5 minutes. That was way too soon. Lady Northern Feng shook her head inwardly. What have you learned? Lady Northern Feng asked indifferently. Feng Wu smiled wryly. 4 years and 3 months. Am I right? What? Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu's answer was so accurate. 4 years and 3 months was right. Back then, Lady Northern Feng had thought that she was pregnant, which had terrified her. That was why she remembered the exact time. Feng Wu smiled. Your pulse feels heavy and your tongue is pale and covered in a thin layer of fur. This indicates that you lack energy in your spleen and stomach, and that you're suffering from overactive phlegmatic fire. You must have lost your temper 4 years and 3 months ago. Am I right? Lady Northern Feng nodded. Lost her temper would be an understatement. She had been so angry that she almost passed out. Seeing Lady Northern Feng confirm her diagnosis, Feng Wu went on. And it was also during that time that you caught a cold, right? Yes. With the internal fire brought on by the anger and the evil energy introduced by the ailment, it was like a fire fanned by the wind. The evil energy made its way into your internal organs, and the spleen and stomach were the first to be damaged, which in turn produced an excessive amount of phlegm. Because the ailment hasn't been properly treated for so long, it makes you dizzy. In fact, the cause of your disease lies in your spleen and stomach. Are you telling me that I have a problem with my spleen and stomach? Lady Northern Feng listened attentively at first, but she smiled bitterly when Feng Wu told her that her headache was caused by a problematic spleen and stomach. Yes. In order to cure you, we have to start working on your spleen and stomach. We'll focus on clearing your phlegm and replenishing your deficiencies while we're at it. The internal fire and evil energy will also be eliminated. Are you telling me that the ailment I had 4 years ago is still inside me? That I was never properly treated? Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said earnestly, yes. Not only weren't you cured, your health has been continuously affected by it. You may seem in good shape and only have occasional dizziness, but, if I'm guessing right, you were out in the wind today and had some saltwater fish. I'm afraid that you're going to get dizzy very soon. I can't eat saltwater fish. Of course not. Fish and meat will aggravate the dampness caused by the phlegm inside you. Your body can't handle it, Feng Wu said decisively. Lady Northern Feng wasn't fully convinced. Just then, footsteps came from outside. Lady Northern Feng frowned. She had left instructions that she wasn't to be disturbed. What was this about? There was a knock at the door. Lady Northern Feng darted a glance at Granny Tao, who went off to dismiss the unwelcome guest. "My lady, it's your sister-in-law." It was none other than Mrs. Ning herself. The same Mrs. Ning that Feng Wu had saved and the mother of Ning Chenxi. Of course Lady Northern Feng couldn't chase Mrs. Ning away, and she rose to her feet with a smile. "Dear sister-in-law, what brings you here? Do come in." Mrs. Ning walked in with a few maids and grannies. She looked worn out as she smiled bitterly. "What do you think? I'm here for Miss Feng Lu, of course." Chapter 666, The Truth. Chapter 666, The Truth. Mrs. Ning failed to notice Feng Wu, and began to pour out her grievances right away. "I know Miss Feng Lu is wonderful and smart, and it wouldn't be so easy to get her family to agree. So, we went to Lord Wuan the other day, and asked him to be our go-between. But, the Feng family turned you down again?" Lady Northern Feng frowned. Mrs. Ning smiled bitterly. "That's right. Sir Feng only said wait and see, and that was as good as a refusal. We've done everything there is to be done and showed as much sincerity as we could. But the Feng family just won't say yes. I even went to see Mrs. Feng the other day myself." Mrs. Ning sounded more aggrieved as she spoke. She gave me a similar reply, saying that her daughter was still young and that she'd like to have her around for a bit longer. "I know she's still young, but we're not asking her to get married right away. An engagement will do. But the Feng family won't even say yes to that. Chenxi studied so hard for Imperial College's entrance exam this time, and he got the third highest score." Mrs. Ning was almost in tears. "He stayed up late to study and lost so much weight from his hard work. He did all that just to get good grades to please the Feng family. Look, he was third. And his cultivation achievement is way above average. I'm sure he'll do great." Lady Northern Feng smacked the table. "And the Feng family still won't accept him? You don't say." Lord Wuan went to talk to Sir Feng himself about the marriage proposal, but Sir Feng turned him down. Mrs. Ning was distraught. Why is the Feng clan so proud? Is Chenxi ever going to be able to marry Miss Feng Lu? Lady Northern Feng snapped, "Forget about her then. Feng Lu isn't a good choice anyway. She doesn't get along with her sister, and she's not particularly talented. I just don't understand what you and Chenxi see in her." Mrs. Ning gave her a wry smile. "The thing with her sister is a big misunderstanding. Feng Wu, her sister, started it. One look and you'll know that the girl is a piece of work. She's always ready to stir things up. Feng Lu really is a nice girl." Lady Northern Feng. Feng Wu was right next to them, and it was so inappropriate for her sister-in-law to say such things. "As for her talent," Mrs. Ning smiled. "I told you once. Miss Feng Lu is actually a genius doctor. Back when we were in Wanping Town, if it wasn't for her, my twins and myself would have all died. She saved me again afterward. She's an amazing girl." Lady Northern Feng almost lost her temper. Was this the same Feng Lu she knew? She snorted. "If this Feng Lu really is as wonderful as you describe, why didn't she even pass the written exam?" Well, Mrs. Ning didn't know what to say. Cough, cough. Standing behind them, Feng Wu felt so awkward. If she was guessing right, the savior Mrs. Ning was talking about was her. However, something must have gone wrong, for the lady had mistaken her for Feng Lu. But why did Ning Chenxi want to marry her? Feng Wu shook her head. She began to back away, hoping that she could sneak off before things got more awkward. However, Lady Northern Feng's palm landed on her shoulder. "Xiao Wu, is it true? Feng Lu is secretly a genius doctor?" Chapter 667, Who is the real Feng Lu? Chapter 667, Who is the real Feng Lu? Lady Northern Feng's question attracted everyone's attention. Only then did Mrs. Ning see Feng Wu's face. So did Granny Chu beside her. Both women were shocked. They looked as if they had been struck by lightning. All words failed them. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Mrs. Ning, it's been a while. Mrs. Ning didn't know what to say. This was so embarrassing. She had poured out her grievances without checking the room first, and had gone on and on about Feng Lu and the Feng clan. She hadn't tried to hide her dissatisfaction at all. But the person she was talking about had been here all along. And that person had saved her life before. Mrs. Ning was so embarrassed. Xiao Wu, you know my sister-in-law? Mrs. Ning was the sister of the Northern Feng general. Xiao Wu. Mrs. Ning looked at Lady Northern Feng in bewilderment. You called her Xiao Wu. That's right. Lady Northern Feng nodded. Isn't she Feng Lu? Mrs. Ning looked at Feng Wu in astonishment. You're Feng Lu and you saved me twice on our way back, didn't you? Mrs. Ning sounded desperate, for she had a very bad feeling about this. Lady Northern Feng was equally baffled. What Feng Lu? She's Feng Wu, the fifth daughter of the Feng clan. Feng Lu is the sixth daughter. How can you mistaken one for the other? Mrs. Ning was dazed on the spot. You're Feng Wu? Your name is Feng Wu? You really are Feng Wu? Mrs. Ning grabbed Feng Wu's wrist. You tell me who you are. Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. Mrs. Ning, there must have been a misunderstanding. I've always been called Feng Wu and Feng Lu is my sister. You've met her before as well. She was with Feng Yiran at the time. Mrs. Ning. My lady. My lady. Mrs. Ning shut her eyes and her knees buckled. She almost fainted. Luckily, Granny Chu reacted in time and stopped Mrs. Ning from falling. Seeing Mrs. Ning's reaction, most of the people in the room had guessed the truth. Granny Tao looked shaken. Did Mrs. Ning mistaken Miss Feng Lu for Miss Feng Wu? That is. Lady Northern Feng was equally bewildered. Feng Wu shook her head. Taking out a silver needle, she gave Mrs. Ning's philtrum a quick prick and Mrs. Ning opened her eyes shortly afterward. Mrs. Ning was furious after she regained her strength. I was misled. It's a huge misunderstanding. This is so. Lady Northern Feng patted her on the back. Calm down, calm down. Luckily, the damage is still under control. Although, how could this have happened? Mrs. Ning was so angry that her face had drained of all color. That day, Miss Feng Wu. She took Feng Wu's hand. After Miss Feng Wu left, Granny Chu went to ask for the name of the girl who saved my life, and that Feng Lu told her that it was Feng Lu who had helped me. That was why I've been mistaking Feng Lu for Miss Wu all along. And I wasn't the only one. That girl said the same thing to Chenxi. Hence, Mrs. Ning had gone straight to the Feng clan after they arrived at the imperial capital, asking for a marriage arrangement with Feng Lu. Lady Northern Feng said, So, you are all victims of that real Feng Lu. Mrs. Ning was almost in tears. It's so stupid of us. We've been trying so hard to marry Chenxi to that Feng Lu. And we pulled so many strings. And as it turns out, Chapter 668, Do You Want the Truth? Chapter 668, Do You Want the Truth? Infuriated, Mrs. Ning spat out a mouthful of blood. Lady Northern Feng was exasperated. Don't be so mad. It's fortunate that they didn't say yes. You would have even more to handle if they had agreed, and you found out the truth afterward. Only then did Mrs. Ning calm down a little. But she was still very angry. How dare that girl try to play me like this? Feng the Second isn't someone she can mess with. Mrs. Ning used to be a handful herself before she got married. Lady Northern Feng smiled. Miss Feng Lu would have a very hard time after this. Feng Wu shook her head. She had no idea that Feng Lu could be so reckless. However, it had been Feng Lu's decision, and Feng Lu would have to face Mrs. Ning's wrath herself. Seeing that Mrs. Ning was all right, Feng Wu asked for permission to leave. Fearing that keeping Feng Wu here would embarrass her even more, Lady Northern Feng let her go back home. Feng Lu. There will be consequences. I won't let her off so easily, Mrs. Ning said between gritted teeth as she clasped Lady Northern Feng's hand. All right. Lady Northern Feng then asked Mrs. Ning to tell her what happened on the way back to the imperial capital. Mrs. Ning told her in detail. She had told Lady Northern Feng once before, but the lady's mind had wandered off, because Mrs. Ning had been talking about Feng Lu, whom Lady Northern Feng didn't like. But it was different this time. The story was about Feng Wu, and Lady Northern Feng hung on to every word. What? She saved you twice? And she helped the twins as well? Lady Northern Feng was surprised. That's right. Xiao Wu is an incredible doctor. Young Master Ba of Wanping Town said that I was beyond saving and that they should prepare for my funeral, but Miss Wu wouldn't give up. She brought me back from the brink of death. Young Master Ba is old Master Ba's grandson, that old Master Ba. Mrs. Ning sighed with emotion. Old Master Ba? Everyone in the Junwu Empire knew the name of that medicine refiner. Lady Northern Feng and Granny Tao exchanged looks. So, they could trust Xiao Wu's medical skills after all. Then, Lady Tang's spy poisoned me and I almost died. Miss Wu saved me again. Her skills are truly unmatched. She's that good? Lady Northern Feng cried out in surprise. She's that good? I didn't know that. Little Feng Wu has always been ignored or bullied at home. Where did she learn all that? Xiao Wu is having a hard time at home? Mrs. Ning took Lady Northern Feng's hand, her eyes flickering. Lady Northern Feng nodded. That's right. After what happened 5 years ago, her family members are either crippled or weak. They've been through so much. As far as I know, they've struggled quite a bit. Mrs. Ning tightened her grip. Sister-in-law, help me. You have to help me this time. What? We've been mistaking Feng Lu for Feng Wu the whole time, which is why I've been trying to get Chenxi engaged to Feng Lu. But now, I'm going to ask for a marriage agreement with Feng Wu. Mrs. Ning was excited. We want to take care of Xiao Wu. I promise we'll be very nice to her. Sister-in-law, please help me. Marry Feng Wu to Ning Chenxi? Lady Northern Feng didn't like the sound of that at all. I'm afraid not. But why? Mrs. Ning asked. Lady Northern Feng looked at Mrs. Ning. My dear sister-in-law, do you want the truth? Chapter 669, but... Chapter 669, but... Mrs. Ning said eagerly, Of course I want to hear the truth. Please tell me. Lady Northern Feng cleared her throat. Sweetheart, you know I always speak my mind and never sugarcoat things. Yes. I'm going to be straightforward with you then. Sister-in-law, just say it, Mrs. Ning urged her. I offered a marriage proposal to Xiao Wu on Ah Sun's behalf before you arrived. What? Mrs. Ning almost jumped to her feet. As Northern Feng General's only child, Feng Sun was the sole heir to Northern Feng Mansion. Could he take Feng Wu as his wife? Lady Northern Feng asked, Do you think that Xiao Wu would be marrying above her station? After some hesitation, Mrs. Ning nodded. After all, Xiao Wu can't cultivate anymore. I've always wanted her as a daughter-in-law, ever since she was little, and I haven't changed my mind. I'd really love for Ah Sun to marry her. The girl is impeccable in her appearance, temperament, wisdom, talent. You name it. Even when she's lost her cultivation ability, she still got the highest score in the written exam. Lady Northern Feng looked at Mrs. Ning. You said that Chenxi worked from dawn to dusk to prepare for the exam, and he got the third highest score. He got 250, if I remember correctly? Mrs. Ning nodded. Lady Northern Feng said, but little Feng Wu got 300. Full marks. Mrs. Ning was stunned. Really? Really? Her answer sheets were posted on the bulletin board, and I went to read them myself. It was perfection itself. Lady Northern Feng said in amazement. As a straight D student, she had always admired curve wreckers like Feng Wu. Mrs. Ning was speechless. The girl didn't think Maya Sun was good enough for her. As for Ning Chensi, Lady Northern Feng smiled wryly. I really think you should give up on the idea. Mrs. Ning was speechless. That same night, Lady Northern Feng felt normal when she went to bed, but at midnight, her clothes were soaked with cold sweat, and her head was pounding. It hurts. Granny Tao was startled. Miss Feng Wu had predicted that the effects of her ladyship's ailment would show up soon, but they didn't expect it to be this soon. My lady, my lady! Hearing the noise, Feng Sun rushed out of his own courtyard. Mum! Feng Sun took Lady Northern Feng's hands. I'll go fetch an imperial physician. Hang in there. Face pale, Lady Northern Feng was drenched in cold sweat, but she wouldn't let go of Feng Sun's hands. Xiao Wu! Xiao Wu! Feng Sun was worried sick and looked at Granny Tao in confusion. Granny Tao said hastily, Please go fetch Miss Feng Wu. She knows what to do. She can help her ladyship. Hurry up. Feng Sun had seen what Feng Wu could do with her medical skills. Mrs. Ning's case had been an excellent demonstration. No problem. I'll go get her now. Without hesitation, Feng Sun dashed off. He ran as fast as he could. Feng Wu hadn't gone to bed yet. Instead, she was boiling some herbal medicine. Feng Wu had bought the necessary ingredients from a herbal medicine shop on her way back home from Northern Feng Mansion. She had proceeded to boil them right away. Bang! Feng Sun rushed in, grabbed Feng Wu's arm, and tried to drag her away. Hey, wait! Feng Wu was still working on the medicine. She fetched a bottle, poured the liquid in, then handed it to Feng Sun. What's this? The medicine to help your mother, said Feng Wu. Divide this into 3 equal portions and feed each one to her every 2 hours. I'll check up on her tomorrow morning. But I examined her this afternoon. This will work on her, Feng Wu said earnestly. Chapter 670 Caring Chioling. Chapter 670 Caring Chioling. Feng Wu looked so trustworthy. Feng Sun stared at her for a minute before he gave a nod. He then left with the medicine. Miss, are you not going with him? Are you sure they'll be all right? Chioling was concerned. After all, the patient was Lady Northern Feng. The medicine will solve her problem. Feng Wu was very confident. In fact, Feng Wu was too busy to leave home. She was designing a formation. Since Grand Secretary Feng had given her the property next door, Feng Wu decided that she would make full use of the lode underground. Dig the spiritual stones out? That didn't seem like the most ideal choice. Instead, Feng Wu decided that she would build a cultivation formation on top of that lode. With her current capability, she could easily build a Grandmaster-level essence-gathering formation. With it, Xiaoqi, Chioling, and the others would be able to get double the results with half the work. After studying the terrain, Feng Wu set out to build a small Immortal Tai formation. Thus, Feng Wu spent the whole night focusing on drawing out the formation. She had to be very precise with her strokes. Quilling bustled in and out of the room, delivering Tsuling tea and hot towels to her mistress. Feng Wu was consuming an abundant amount of spiritual essence while she drew the diagram, which made her sweat profusely. The sweat had to be wiped off before it dripped down. The drawing would be ruined if even 1 drop of sweat fell on it. Feng Wu had left the instruction before she started working. Chioling looked at her mistress. Miss Wu could be carefree and light-hearted at times, and she never hesitated to pretend or show weakness when necessary. However, when she put her mind to something, she held nothing back. Right now, Feng Wu seemed to be in an enigmatic, indescribable state. She kept adding more to the drawing, and with each stroke, more spiritual essence was consumed. She had long drained her spiritual essence, and was only able to hold on because of top-grade spiritual stones and Tsuling tea. One after another, the top-grade spiritual stones shattered into little pieces, and no matter how many cups of Tsuling tea Tsuling brought in, Feng Wu downed them all. Tsuling looked at Feng Wu's pale lips and the cold sweat on her forehead. Tsuling worried about her mistress so much. But she knew better than to disturb Feng Wu or try to talk her out of it. In moments like this, Feng Wu was the most stubborn. She would lose her temper if anyone tried to interrupt her when she was working. Tsuling had no idea how long it would take Feng Wu to finish. Leaning against the doorframe, Tsuling looked up at the silver moon and kept Feng Wu company. Soon, it was deep into the night. Then dawn came and the eastern sky began to light up. The first ray of sunlight painted the sky orange. Only then did Feng Wu put down her pen. Miss. Tsuling already had a towel ready, which had been heated to the right temperature to soothe Feng Wu's fatigue. Feng Wu put the hot towel over her face. The steam felt very comfortable. She glanced at Tsuling. You soaked the towel in hot Tsuling tea. What a waste. With the steam from the Tsuling tea, Feng Wu's eyes felt rested and looked as limpid as before. Tsuling took the towel, then handed Feng Wu a pair of soft slippers. All of Feng Wu's shoes were made by Tsuling to the exact measurement of Feng Wu's feet. They always fit Feng Wu nicely. Tsuling, it's so wonderful to have you around. I don't think I'd know what to do without you. Feng Wu enjoyed Tsuling's service. Tsuling smiled gently. Miss Wu, you're meant for important things. Helping you with the petty matters is all I can do. Chapter 671 Spectacular. Chapter 671 Spectacular. But the petty things are the most difficult to do properly, said Feng Wu. I'm going to see Grand Secretary Feng next door. Send Feng Tutu to fetch me if someone comes. Tsuling said, no problem. Rolling up the drawing and tucking it under her arm, Feng Wu jumped over the wall. Grand Secretary Feng opened his eyes in surprise when Feng Wu unfolded the drawing in front of him. Wait! Grand Secretary Feng was stunned. This is an Immortal Tai essence gathering formation. Grand Secretary Feng stared at Feng Wu. This is a Grandmaster level formation which has been lost for generations. Where did you get this? No, that's not it. Grand Secretary Feng examined the paper and the ink. That's not right. Why is the paper the same as mine here? It's the paper from Calming Mind Hall. It's a new product on the market, and the ink. Who drew this? Grand Secretary Feng stared at Feng Wu. What do you think of the drawing? Feng Wu asked casually. It's great. It's wonderful. It's a perfect Grandmaster level essence gathering formation. Even the corners are immaculate. Most importantly, Grand Secretary Feng turned to Feng Wu. Do you know why it's so hard to pass on the design of an essence-gathering formation? Why? Because, in order to draw it, one has to be a cultivator first. They also have to have an understanding of formations, or they won't be able to comprehend the essence-gathering formation. Last but not least, they have to be an expert illustrator to do the actual drawing. Grand Secretary Feng looked astonished. Who drew this? You must have met the person, right? Take me to them. Feng Wu asked, is it really that good? She had learned to draw from her beautiful master. Her beautiful master had taught her a lot of things, and drawing was only one of them. He had only taught her because she needed it in order to learn to draw formations. However, she had never slacked off over the years and had practiced her skills frequently. This person will be the pillar of the empire, Grand Secretary Feng said in excitement. If they're willing to teach in Imperial College, I'll recommend that they become a member of the Education Board. Kiddo, take me to this person now. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Grand Secretary Feng looked at her in confusion. Feng Wu then gestured at herself. Grand Secretary Feng didn't get it at first. What? I drew it, Feng Wu said earnestly. Grand Secretary Feng. Feng Wu nodded. Yup. Grand Secretary Fong said, "Kiddo, this is no laughing matter." Feng Wu only smiled. Grand Secretary Fong had seen Feng Wu's formation skills, her cultivation, and her theoretical knowledge, but he had never expected her to be an expert illustrator, too. "Exactly where did you learn all these things?" Grand Secretary Fong exhaled. "When did you learn how to draw? What on earth? Talk about excelling over one's seniors." Feng Wu smiled bitterly. "I learned 5 years ago. After that, I was busy studying how to refine medicine, and I haven't drawn for a while. Luckily, I still know how to do it." The old man didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said, "Old master, what do you think of this Immortal Tai formation?" "What do I think? It's spectacular." Chapter 672 Heart of Ice Essence. Chapter 672 Heart of Ice Essence. So, shall we build an Immortal Tai formation in the manner based on this drawing? Feng Wu was thrilled. The thought of taking part in the construction of a Grandmaster-level formation excited Grand Secretary Fong. Of course! Even Imperial College can't build such a formation. Grand Secretary Fong gloated. "It's been suggested, but they don't have enough spiritual stones to sustain such a formation." All advanced cultivators knew the significance of an Immortal Tai formation. Feng Wu said, "Old master, I'm afraid I'll have to leave the preparation of the building materials to you." Grand Secretary Fong waved his hand. "Don't worry about it. Your top priority now is the physical tryout in 7 days." After some thought, Grand Secretary Fong sighed in resignation. "Kiddo, you're a level 5 spiritual grandmaster already and much more advanced than any of the other candidates. You'll have no problem getting the highest score." "No." Feng Wu smiled bitterly. "Old master, Yuminji is a candidate this year as well." Grand Secretary Fong also smiled bitterly at the thought of Yuminji. "I had high hopes for him, but he only passed the written exam as the last on the list. He was set up." Feng Wu couldn't help but chuckle when she recalled how Jun Linyuan had tricked Yuminji into waiting on Imperial Capital Tower for a whole night. The guy ended up catching a bad cold. Grand Secretary Fong said, "Yuminji is the dark sacred son and as famous as His Royal Highness. Who could have set him up?" "Jun Linyuan." Grand Secretary Fong rubbed his chin. "That makes sense." That made sense? So, Grand Secretary Fong thought it was natural for Yuminji to fall for Jun Linyuan's tricks. Well, maybe everyone thought it was natural that Jun Linyuan could fool anyone. "By the way, what will the physical tryout be like this year?" Feng Wu asked. She had asked the right person, for Grand Secretary Fong had overseen the physical tryout many times. Grand Secretary Fong said, "The physical tryout will take place on one of 7 terrains: an iceberg, a snowfield, a wasteland, a swamp, a desert, grassland, or a forest. The location will be chosen randomly. But given that Mr. Liu is in seclusion and with what happened with Zhuohe, the college hasn't decided how to proceed yet." Feng Wu tilted her head. "For the eye of the Immortal Tai formation, we'll need a Heart of Ice essence." The old man nodded. "We can pull some strings or purchase the other materials, but the Heart of Ice essence isn't something you can come across every day. I don't think anyone has it at the moment, but..." "But what?" "But in the location known as Proud Snowfield, there is a giant ice beast. Snowy Night Ice Beast. Its heart is a Heart of Ice essence," Grand Secretary Fong said in a serious voice. "And the location of the physical tryout hasn't been decided yet." "No," Grand Secretary Fong frowned. He realized what Feng Wu was going to say. As expected, the girl said decisively, "How about making it happen in Proud Snowfield?" "No." The old man turned her down outright. "One has to be a Year 2 student at least to enter Proud Snowfield's outer region, not to mention that all of you are only candidates. No, I won't allow it." "But..." "No buts." Grand Secretary Fong frowned. I'll think of something else. But locations like Proud Snowfield are for students only and can only be accessed by people of a certain age group, right? You won't be able to get in yourself, said Feng Wu. Chapter 673 All of a Sudden. Chapter 673 All of a Sudden. Some truths weren't meant to be explicitly pointed out. Grand Secretary Fong cast a stern look at Feng Wu. That's not something you should be concerned with. The physical tryout will most likely take place in Seclusion Wasteland. Try to get used to the climate before the exam starts. Now, if you don't have anything else to tell me, go back home and get on with your cultivation. Grand Secretary Fong sent Feng Wu on her way. Proud Snowfield was way too dangerous, and he would never put the kid in such a perilous situation. Moreover, even the actual students of the college were confined to the outer regions, whereas that snowy night ice beast resided deep in the center of the snowfield. If the physical tryout was held in that location, he had no doubt that the dauntless kid would go right in. Feng Wu left the Fong Manor, rubbing her nose all the way. But she still didn't want to give up. Normally, Proud Snowfield only opened once a year. Who knew when it would open again if the tryout wasn't held there? Plus, Feng Wu wanted to complete the formation as soon as possible. That way, not only herself, but all her family members would be able to cultivate more efficiently. After all, the Zhou family was on to her now. What did she have to do to get Proud Snowfield chosen for the physical tryout? Jun Linyuan was the first person who came to Feng Wu's mind. One word from Jun Linyuan and her problem would be solved. However, Feng Wu shook her head at the thought of going to Jun Linyuan for help. No. Was there another option? Feng Wu then thought of Yuminji. The guy acted like a goofball, but when he put his mind to it, he turned out to be very well connected. He had certainly demonstrated his capability in getting Feng Yanfeng that job. Hence, Feng Wu went to Yuminji. Proud Snowfield. Yuminji wasn't there when Feng Wu arrived. Elder One greeted her. When he asked what it was about, Feng Wu told him her request. Feng Wu asked, "Is it possible to pick Proud Snowfield?" Elder One gave it some thought, then smiled at her. "Miss Feng Wu, you've always been a lucky girl. I'm sure your wish will be granted in the end." "Thank you, sir." Feng Wu smiled. "You're welcome. If you do want to thank us, please come and visit our young master more often," said Elder One earnestly. "He talks about you all the time." Feng Wu said, "Of course." She left after that and got back on her carriage. "Miss?" Seeing that Feng Wu was lost in her thoughts, Qiuling raised her voice a little. Feng Wu came back to herself. "Let's go to Northern Feng Mansion now." Qiuling was worried about Feng Wu's health. Her mistress hadn't gotten any sleep last night. After making the medicine, she had gone on to draw the formation right away. She then went to visit Grand Secretary Fong and young master Yuminji one after another. And now, she was going to see Lady Northern Feng. Wasn't this too much, to keep working without any rest? Qiuling was even more concerned when she saw Feng Wu's pale face. Northern Feng Mansion. It was the same guard from last time. Of course he wouldn't try to stop Feng Wu, and he only smiled at her in an obsequious manner. "Miss Feng, we're so glad to see you. Young Lord Feng told me to wait for you and to show you in as soon as you arrive." Feng Wu smiled and nodded at him. Lady Northern Feng was in the main courtyard. Feng Wu could hear hasty footsteps before she entered the courtyard. Feng Sun was inside. Hearing her footsteps, Feng Sun dashed out, grabbed Feng Wu by her wrist, and dragged her inside. "Xiao Wu. Quickly! My mum needs you." There were other people in the room when Feng Sun dragged her in, but Feng Wu didn't have time to see who they were. Chapter 674 What's Wrong? Chapter 674 What's Wrong? Is Lady Northern Feng all right? Feng Wu frowned. Feng Sun grimaced. Her headache was so bad last night that I thought we were going to lose her. Granny Tao went out to fetch you, so I went to Master Bai, who used to treat my mum. He added, Master Bai is an imperial physician and his skills are second only to Master Chu. He prescribed some medicine to treat my mum for her vertigo. Feng Wu glared at him. He didn't. Lady Northern Feng's symptoms are caused by problems with her spleen and stomach. Treating it as vertigo will only give her temporary relief, and will aggravate her symptoms later. That's ridiculous. The girl was very intimidating when she was all serious. Feng Sun cringed at Feng Wu's harsh tone and he pursed his lips. Yes. Without hesitation, Feng Wu checked Lady Northern Feng's pulse. She frowned right away. You still fed her the vertigo medicine. Feng Sun kept his silence. Speak. Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun bit his lip. Her condition was so serious and Master Bai said that your medicine smelled wrong. He said that it would kill my mum, so... Feng Wu frowned as she looked at Lady Northern Feng, who lay still in bed. So, you fed Master Bai's medicine to your mother and she's been lying still like this ever since? Feng Wu smirked. Feng Sun said hesitantly, My mum felt better for about an hour after she took the medicine, then she started to vomit blood. We were so worried that we fed your medicine to her. Feng Sun's eyes lit up. It was like a miracle. Mum stopped vomiting blood after that and she's been sleeping peacefully since then. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at Feng Sun. What are you so cheerful about? Huh? Hasn't my mum been cured by your medicine? Cured? Feng Wu felt like slapping Feng Sun. You fed her my medicine without getting the vertigo medicine out of her system first. Do you know that different medicines can react with each other? If I had added one more portion of divine wood shell in my medicine, your mum would be lying in a coffin now. What? Feng Sun blanched. That's serious. That's serious. Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun drained of all color and was scared out of his wits. Meanwhile, the others in the room all looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Mrs. Ning had never expected Feng Wu to tell Feng Sun off without hesitation. What was more, Feng Sun didn't even dare talk back. Mrs. Ning recalled what Lady Northern Feng had told her the day before. Chenxi stands no chance. Xiao Wu doesn't even want my Ah Sun. Mrs. Ning hadn't been convinced at first, but her heart sank after she saw the interaction between Feng Wu and Feng Sun. And Miss Feng Lu, Ning Chenxi was infatuated when he finally saw Feng Wu again after several months. Feng Sun threw a dirty look at his cousin. What Feng Lu? She's Feng Wu. As in the phoenix soars above the land. Ning Chenxi was completely at a loss. Mrs. Ning hadn't had the chance to tell Ning Chenxi the truth after she got back last night. Then Lady Northern Feng fell ill, and Mrs. Ning was too preoccupied to give her son an explanation. As a result, Ning Chenxi still thought Feng Wu was Feng Lu. Come here. Mrs. Ning dragged Ning Chenxi out of the room, then found a quiet corner and told him everything. Ning Chenxi was shocked. He was dazed on the spot, as if he had been struck by lightning. Chapter 675 S. She's Feng Wu? Chapter 675 S. She's Feng Wu? W. What? S. She's Feng Wu? Not Feng Lu. Mrs. Ning nodded. How is that possible? How? The news was such a hard blow that Ning Chenxi was stupefied. I asked her sister and that girl told me that her sister's name was Feng Lu. Which one is the girl you like, then? Feng Lu or Feng Wu? Mrs. Ning asked in resignation. I want to marry the girl in that room right now. Whatever her name is, I'm in love with her and her alone. Ning Chenxi was almost in tears. But we've been trying to set up an engagement with Miss Feng Lu all this time. Who's Feng Lu? The girl you asked for her sister's name. Ning Chenxi spat out a mouthful of blood. It turned out that he had been courting that girl without knowing it. That's why everybody's been telling us that Feng Lu is this arrogant, willful, and vicious girl that won't make a good wife. They all tried to talk me out of it, and this is why. I've been courting the wrong girl all along. Gosh. Ning Chensi felt like fainting. Mrs. Ning steadied him. Don't be upset. Everything's going to be alright. Luckily, the Feng clan didn't say yes. We can just forget the whole thing. With much difficulty, Ning Chensi nodded at his mother, then glanced back at the room. Forget it? Mrs. Ning snapped. Your aunt wanted her as a daughter-in-law as well, but even Ah Sun isn't her match. She'll never say yes to you. Ning Chensi was speechless. Back inside, Feng Wu checked Lady Northernfeng's pulse, then ran a thorough examination on the lady. She almost lost her temper at what she found and her face darkened. Feng Sun had been tentatively watching Feng Wu, and his stomach lurched when he saw the look on her face. He asked gingerly, Xiao Wu, how serious is it? The two medicines are working against each other and they've gathered in her spleen and stomach. Feng Wu took a deep breath to fight back her urge to smack Feng Sun. Your mother's ailment started from her spleen and stomach, and they're her weakest spots. To make matters worse, the two medicines are incompatible. It's like they're waging war and your mother's weak spleen and stomach are the battlefield. Both medicines want to defeat each other. Does that sound serious enough for you? Feng Sun was almost in tears. I. Young Lord Feng, the famous unruly youth of the imperial capital, who always had his sycophantic buddies around him, almost cried with shame because of what Feng Wu said. Stop it already. Do young lords like you cry this easily? Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Reassured by Feng Wu's teasing tone, Feng Wu tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve. You can save my mother, right? Right. Feng Wu snorted. No one will be able to save her if this happens again. After that, she took out a pack of silver needles from her sleeve. She then stuck the needles in Lady Northernfeng's acupoint. Before long, wisps of smoke began to rise out of Lady Northernfeng's body. Are you trying to vaporize the medicine? Feng Sun asked. Feng Wu darted a look at him. I thought you were going to make Mum vomit, but your skills are much more advanced. I didn't know that was possible, directly vaporizing the medicine. Chapter 676, Godmother? Chapter 676, Godmother? Feng Wu darted a glance at him. Who told you the medicine is evaporating? It's not. Why bother? Plus, it's a waste of my energy. Feng Wu explained as she went on sticking needles into the lady's stomach. All I need to do is lend my medicine a hand and let it do its job to force the other side out. Feng Sun's eyes lit up. Why didn't I think of that before? Because you're dumb. Feng Wu chuckled. Seeing Feng Wu's smile, Feng Sun's mind was set at rest. He was now convinced that his mother would be all right. Looking at Feng Wu, Feng Sun was amazed. He didn't know that this girl was such a wonderful doctor. Back in Wanping Town, when she saved his aunt, he had attributed it partially to luck. As it turned out, she should be given all the credit. After getting Master Bai's medicine out of Lady Northernfeng's system, Feng Wu prescribed her patient something new. She read the prescription as she wrote. 45 g of Pinellia ternata fried with ginger, 30 g of white atractylodes rhizome, 45 g of malt. Soon, she handed the finished prescription to Feng Sun. Feng Sun looked through it and was surprised. These are all inexpensive ingredients. The prescription only consisted of inexpensive ingredients, which altogether wouldn't cost him more than a silver coin. Master Bai's prescribed ingredients cost more than 1,000 silver coins each. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu. The price is irrelevant. All you need are the right ingredient. Feng Wu waved him off. Get going already. Yes, Feng Sun left in a hurry. Lady Northernfeng, who still looked very pale, chuckled. You're awake? Feng Wu helped Lady Northern Feng sit up. Lady Northern Feng nodded, then smiled at Feng Wu. Why are you laughing? Do I look that funny? Feng Wu said in resignation. I've never seen Ah Sun that obedient. Lady Northern Feng found herself a comfortable position, then grinned. He's always been this unruly, bossy young lord who picks on other people. It's so rare to see him getting told off. He deserved it, Feng Wu said grumpily. He didn't believe me and almost got you killed. Taking Feng Wu's hand, Lady Northern Feng sighed with emotion. Kiddo, you're amazing. Are you clairvoyant? You said I was going to get sick and I did. You even made the medicine in advance. Without it, I could be dead by now. My whole body was in pain before you came, especially in my belly. I thought I was going to pass out, but your needles worked wonders. The pain was gone almost as soon as you stuck them in me. Lady Northern Feng had always liked Feng Wu. Now that the girl had saved her life, Feng Wu had become the lady's most favorite person in the world. Lady Northern Feng wanted to keep the girl by her side forever. Feng Wu nodded. The incident last night could be a good thing. Just think of it like popping an abscess to let the pus out. It would be much harder to treat if the ailment stayed in you for too long. Lady Northern Feng nodded, then asked earnestly, Xiao Wu, are you not going to consider Ah Sun as a possible husband for you? Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. The young lord and I aren't made for each other. Lady Northern Feng sighed in resignation. She had an inkling earlier that Feng Wu wasn't fond of Feng Sun when she heard their conversation. As it turned out, she was right. However, Lady Northern Feng simply liked Feng Wu too much to give up. If she couldn't have her as a daughter-in-law, she could live with having her as a goddaughter. Hence, Lady Northern Feng took Feng Wu's hand and stared at the latter with sparkling eyes. How would you like me as a godmother? Chapter 677 Great News. Chapter 677 Great News. Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. To be honest, with Northern Feng Mansion's current status, it was way beyond Feng Wu's power to form a connection with them. But Lady Northern Feng was sincere. Won't you say yes? Lady Northern Feng swayed Feng Wu's hand back and forth and asked in a pitiful voice. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. What happened to that tough lady? Feng Wu could never say no to such an earnest request. Well, I'll have to discuss it with my mum. That was to say, Feng Wu wasn't against the idea? Lady Northern Feng's face lit up right away. Other people would envy her so much for having a pretty, capable, and smart goddaughter like this. The thought brought a bright smile to Lady Northern Feng's face. Feng Sun came back with the medicine at that moment. Seeing that his mother was already looking much better after such a short period of time, he was thrilled. He went up to her in a hurry. Mum, are you all right now? Lady Northern Feng said lightheartedly, Xiao Wu is here. Of course I'm all right. You look so happy. Feng Sun was bewildered. Of course. Care to share? Lady Northern Feng grinned. You'll be thrilled to hear the news, but... Exchanging looks with Feng Wu, Lady Northern Feng smiled at Feng Sun. I'll tell you what it is when I get confirmation. Kiddo, you'll be so happy. Looking from Feng Wu to his mother, Feng Sun thought to himself, was his mother going to marry little Feng Wu to him? If that was the case, he really would be so thrilled. Feng Sun grinned at his mother. Feng Wu told her beautiful mother about it after she got back home. The lady rubbed Feng Wu's head, then asked in a pitiful voice, Will you still be my Xiao Wu? Taking her mother's soft, fair hand, Feng Wu said earnestly, I'll always be your Xiao Wu. Lady Northern Feng was a great lady, but Feng Wu was going to take her offer for another reason. Right now, Feng Wu had no one backing her. She had a score to settle and a goal to reach. But she was still too weak to protect this family. She needed connections, resources, and patrons. Lady Northern Feng was the most popular socialite, and the Northern Feng general was an influential military official who guarded the border of the empire. The lady was warm, cheerful, tough, sincere, and friendly. Feng Sun was easy to get along with, too. The offer had been dropped in Feng Wu's lap, and she had no reason to turn it down. From now on, she could leave a lot of things to Northern Feng Mansion and wouldn't have to go to Jun Linyuan anymore. Feng Wu was elated by the idea. She then sent a message back to Lady Northern Feng, accepting the offer. Lady Northern Feng was over the moon. She couldn't stay in bed anymore and scrambled to her feet. Granny Tao, quickly, get my things ready. We're going to visit the Feng clan. Feng Sun stopped his mother right away. Why the rush? Can't it wait until after you get better? But I am better. Xiao Wu can cure anything. What Lady Northern Feng didn't tell her goofy son was that she had gotten her first period in over 4 years. Feng Sun examined Lady Northern Feng's complexion. She did look much better. But why are you in a hurry to visit the Feng clan? Feng Sun was bewildered. How about I go fetch Feng Wu for you?